arcades or facade treatments, architectural patterns, including the building massiveness, not just to have one block, but kind of break it down, you know. Yes. So anyway, there are many, horizontal articulations, vertical articulations. When we talk about design, there are a lot of different considerations that we can actually request to the applicant. So also, in terms of design guidelines or design considerations, we can ask further landscape buffers, for example, So basically what I'm saying is, it's not only about the height of the building, it's also how does the building look and what is the relationship of the building with the road, with the street, So these are just examples. And that's pretty much it. And so, got any questions?
Thanks, Nelsa. So I think kind of to get the conversation started is, one, does the council want to start looking at some areas in more detail? If we do, I think we should identify them and make sure we're not overlapping with anything that Treasure Coast Regional Planning is doing. Because you focus a lot on Beach Road, but I don't know. I know Treasure Coast is doing the commercial corridor, and they're gonna think a little bit of Questa Drive, but that's about it, right? So there are some other areas, like maybe mixed use areas, we might want to consider as well. And then the third is, how in depth do we want to look? Do we want to mess with density or anything that would change a comp plan, which would have kind of legal implications, or more just zoning and aesthetics and stuff that isn't going to require any legal? So kind of just to get the conversation started.
I personally want to see us go through the charrette and see what kind of potentially landscaping ideas that they have, or architectural or building articulations, recommendations, so that we can then carry that forward from that point on.
I mean, the issue of building articulation is what they came back, what Mastriani family came back to us with when, there were issues and concerns raised about their original design, and that whole process of allowing somebody to come in and present a concept and allowing us to provide feedback, I think has actually worked fairly well. But I do think you want to give the architects some freedom to be creative, but if it's completely open-ended, you don't want to have mixed messages coming from different councils, at different points in time. So I do think there needs to be some consensus of thought. The only other issue I wanted to bring up is Jeremy and I had met with the gentleman who owns the land on County Line about a month ago, and he mentioned that he probably he's acknowledging that the assisted living is not going to work there.
He's trying to sell it.
So we had suggested, and I had talked with George a few months ago about the whole issue of essential housing and people getting priced out of the market here, and he had talked about, there's a big push within Palm Beach County to try to address that in some way, shape, or form. So we had brought up the idea of maybe looking at that parcel with that in mind, and said, George is the right person to talk to, because George Gentile is very much involved in this whole process. He mentioned density there, and my thought was, and I don't know how everybody else feels about this, and I told him, I said, I can't speak for anyone but myself, but I'm wondering if we could even create another district, like an R4, that might allow still have a limit of maybe 3 stories, 3 stories in that area, but allow a higher density to make affordable housing, more practical. So maybe that becomes a district that's R4, and it allows 18 units, per acre instead of the maximum 12. Just a thought, just an idea. If you look at, we've all said this, whether it's teachers, police, fire, just people getting started in life, they're priced out of this village. There is no place for them to go. Not only is there no place to buy, even rents are going crazy. crazy here, so. You know, if he were willing to come in, or somebody else were willing to come in and develop, you know, again, we're talking about quality housing, we're not talking about, you know, Section 8 or anything like that, but quality housing development, I would be in favor of us creating another zoning district that would allow a higher density in exchange, or with the understanding that it was gonna be used for that specific purpose, but it's just an idea.
Where is that property on County Line?
It's old rude land.
It's right next to where
Oh,
it's right next
the
to
Root
Hannah's.
land?
Yeah, it's right next to Hannah's home.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a good thought. I mean, I've talked to Jeremy about that and the lack of discussions we've had here with, I mean, they're even changed it to be called essential housing now and workforce
Right.
housing, because it's like, you know, civil engineer comes out of college and, you know, normal job is that, you know, everyone, they can't even buy something. It's horrible. So,
It's getting hard to rent
you know,
something.
that's not a bad idea. But, and to your point, Kyle, I definitely agree. There's gotta be, probably some kind of cohesiveness, what Treasure Coast Regional Planning comes up with. But I think it's, like, you put R3 with the commercial quarter, they're gonna look different too. So I think you could take some ideas from that, but it's gonna look different. So maybe we could concurrently look at it, but don't make any final decisions until that part's done.
I think something has to be decided, because as you drive down US 1 now, it's all hodgepodge of different designs all the way down. So it'd be nice to have something that doesn't necessarily constrain the architect, but something that.
But, yeah, you don't necessarily want it to look, I've said this before, like, we've got friends up in Hilton Head, we've been up there a few times. And to me, Hilton Head is like the most boring place in the world. Everything looks exactly the same. I mean, it's so unimaginative. So, yeah, you want things to fit together, you know, like pieces of a puzzle, but I don't wanna see them, everything exactly identical. Because then you lose the creativity and the charm and the uniqueness.
But there is definitely a way to do a cohesiveness
Right.
with what I think Nielsen keeps bringing to us is just small little elements that would tie everything in, but they can be their own unique buildings to an extent. In response to possibly creating a new zone, and to that property on County Line, I would support affordable housing, but I have concerns. Because even the county is trying to do affordable housing, which is really not really affordable. Now they're looking at the numbers for cost of build, and they're running into issues with that where it's actually not really being that affordable. I would probably not support 18 units per acre. I actually already don't really favor that our mixed use already has that, because the reserve is 12 units per acre and they are packed in there. So I couldn't imagine what would be packed into the County Line property at 18 units per acre.
You know, it might be a situation
Especially
where
at
you,
3 stories.
well,
Well, if
the
you
reserve is,
higher.
yeah, you might have to go to 3 or 4 stories to make it work.
I would not support 4 stories at all, just to be open and clear. But I do have really a lot of hesitancy about affordable housing. Because I remember a previous council member sat here when we did the reserve, and I remember her and I were concerned about the pricing that they were saying they were gonna sell them, and now they're gonna sell them for even more when they were first here, and just,
That's just market though.
and I know the county's having the same issue with that new development they're doing, so I'd say let's be careful of putting that term on it.
And all markets change, so this might be a short-term issue.
Sure.
You don't know.
I mean, he's not even sold yet, sure. I do have a question for Nilsa. Let's see, can you go back to slide? Oh. It's the one, I think 6? Yes. Okay, so the green with the lines through it for conservation. Go over to the beach side, yep. Go over to the beach side, down. Yep. Is that the beach or is that like possible restoration of dunes?
So it's marked out as a conservation, so I will need to do more research, but it looks like it's the dunes area, you know? It looks like it's the dune area that is part of the, you know, of this conservation land use.
Okay, so is that a thing? So if redevelopment comes in, that they would, I don't think
So
we have,
this
we
is,
don't have
well,
anything on paper
no,
right now, but.
this is, okay, this is already medium density. all of this is medium density. So I just see this area here, you're right, is part of this conservation area, but it's very clear that it's medium density. The land use is medium density.
Okay.
Those lots has medium
I was
density.
just wondering why that little sliver was over there.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah, I am looking at that now. Usually when we receive, let's say for example, when we receive the sea glass that is located here, obviously there is a beach area that is included, and we always look at the dunes, the existing dunes, we do look at that. That is part of,
Is that part of the
There.
percentage of the conservation land? The other previous
yes,
slide?
it's conservation, it's right here, so
So we include that in our percentage of conservation land.
yes.
Okay. That's all I have for right this second.
Going back to the workforce housing, because it's a super hot topic everywhere, and
Which is
I think, no, just the workforce housing, obviously this is the first time we're talking about any of this, and I think location needs to be considered, because, looking at off county line, that would be very, very intrusive to have a taller building around all those houses too. So, there's a lot to consider, obviously this is our first time we're talking about this, but placement, where it's, there's so many things to consider there.
I think the only reason, obviously this was earmarked for the assisted living facility, and I know the gentleman has indicated now that he wants to take a different path, but, to the point that Nielsen made earlier, we don't really have much land left, so
Yeah.
that's why that particular parcel, and I understand about going four stories, and maybe you cap it at 3, but if you're gonna try and do, and again, the term people now use is essential housing, not workforce any longer, because that had a bad connotation. But if you're gonna do it, to your point, you gotta find a way to do it to make it affordable. And I'm not saying, I don't know whether he can or he can't. I do know Palm Beach, through these programs, my understanding from George, as they get this thing rolling, is there could be some funding assistance or some other monies that might become available to assist in the development of these types of opportunities. I know Palm Beach Gardens has already done one. I think when we were at that District 1 meeting, they mentioned that they had already successfully developed one, and that was information they were willing to share. So that was the only reason I brought up that particular parcel. It's next to Hannah's home, which is.
It's really the only property you can bring up.
Yeah, it's really the only thing you've got, but you do have homes behind it, and he's sensitive to that, so there would have to be an appropriate distance barrier to the homes that are to the south and to the west. But
6 years ago, you could come out of college and start a home here.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Impossible.
this is a blip in time, potentially. I don't know that it's something that with the land that we've got and the availability of spare land, that it's something that we can solve. And so
it was just a thought.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with the thought. I just don't.
And you're right, it's the only land we got that might be workable at this point.
Until something's redeveloped.
Well, but if it's redeveloped, I don't know that, given the prices that people are having to pay, whether you can redevelop that situation. That land is unique because the purchase price it was acquired at, he's put money in it obviously to clean up the brownfield. So there's some things there that, I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, I'm just saying there may be an opportunity. It's probably the best opportunity if we decide we wanted to try and pursue it or encourage him to pursue it.
I like it. I don't mind going higher either. So you've got, that's Magnolia Way that butts up against it. Those are all 2-story homes with vaulted ceilings, so even a 3-story wouldn't be that intrusive. Those are all really big homes. And then like you said, Hannah's home is right to the east. It's not like you're dropping it in the middle of a developed neighborhood. I think it's worth just mentioning at least,
I know we're not gonna solve it tonight.
No.
So the future conversation would be whether or not we change that to its own zone for some sort of housing.
could we make it more attractive to do an essential housing project there by increasing the density somewhat, which would hopefully improve the affordability.
Art. I remember
Well,
he came years ago with a design of cramming houses in there, and then he had street parking, and
Yeah.
there was issues with all kinds of
Yeah.
logistics on that.
Well, and we do have the 18 units in the mixed use areas,
I know.
so we do have that as a precedent.
I'm opposed to increasing density.
Yeah, I think without some type of density relief, I don't think, based on the conversation Jeremy and I had with him and what I've talked to George about, I don't think it's doable if you don't get some density relief to try to improve the affordability.
I have a question for Niels, if you don't mind, Mayor. Okay, so when we go changing subjects, if we talk about the building densities on, say, US 1 and Beach Road, and we're talking about the building architecture and aesthetics, you were showing us the tiered options
Yes.
that are turning to be a popular choice. Have developers been favoring those options, and then it doesn't create such a block?
I have not talked with developers with regard to that specific.
Because even the
Because we don't
Maserati
have
building
it-
is kind of tiered.
Yeah, we don't have that in our code now, so I have not, I do ask.
So that
As you all know, we are in the middle of reviewing 300 Beach Road. So anyway, but since it's not in our code, it's very difficult to even ask.
Because that's
you know.
something, when we get to the SRET, I wanna hear what the community people wanna see, if they wanna see those kind of style buildings. But is that gonna affect what they can and can't build, as far as what the regulations for units and heights? You think they're
Definitely.
gonna go outwards as opposed to going up?
Well, if we don't, because if we, as we already mentioned, density, we don't want to increase density or decrease density, even much more difficult. So we can, consider the step down or the massiveness to be a little bit, not to be a block, basically, to provide, because when you are a block, it's hard to dialogue with the street because you are a block and you are sitting there. But if you are, part of your design guideline is to say, well, you need to propose something that is not just one block, just to maybe 2 blocks and a step down, or something, give us something, canopies, articulations. So then it is better, and that will be, I'm just thinking that will be a consideration without changing density and without changing the height, so that's what I'm thinking.
Now this kind of ties in with what will probably be discussed in the SRET, but I mean, for me, I would envision driving through a village as a village, not driving down Okeechobee Boulevard where you're literally in lanes and there's nothing but
Yeah.
buildings. And then you get nervous and congested because you have bikers going across and walkers, so I would like to avoid that, but that will all come, I think, in the charrette.
Well, with the charrette, we're not
How close the buildings are to the road.
looking at, we're looking at, closeness to the road, but we're not looking at the taller buildings, right? We're not looking at Beach Road, we're looking at US 1, what's the max there? 4 stories, so,
50 feet.
which is, those points are still very important there. But like I said, there's other areas that aren't being looked at in that process that, now is the time to look at it and consider changing stuff if we want to.
And some of the buildings on the beach. I actually really appreciate those slides you put together with the building dates, because most of them are very old, and some of them are very large for them being very old. The ones that aren't super tall, like the 3 and the 4
Yes,
story,
there
the
were
6
three,
story.
see, up to, yeah.
If for redevelopment, that can go.
Yes,
Okay.
of course, because the code is, up to, 11 stories. So if they are redeveloped, they can go up easily. The code allows. However, our code doesn't have design considerations.
Right.
Just height.
I like interesting buildings rather than just
Right.
solid block condos. And I'm always open to hearing the architect's creative way of what he wants to do, he or she. I like balconies, I think they're a good safety proponent as well, so that way if something is happening inside, residents have somewhere to go, and so the firefighters can get them with the ladders.
mean, I think like the
I've
current.
seen it too many times in those videos. Every standing on the balcony.
The current trend and what we've been seeing here and in other municipalities all the way down to Miami, it's glass, 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 glass. And I don't know, I mean, do we have, I know from an energy standpoint, like glazing has to meet a certain criteria, but do we have any requirements for glazing as relation to like glare and stuff? I don't, you know, cause I mean, that's a lot of glass. And so just little things like that, you know, it's feasible that, yeah, the smaller buildings go down one day, of course everyone's gonna probably build the next height and it's gonna be glazing everywhere until the next trend comes
We're all in
along.
Florida, there's constant sun.
Yeah, and that's a real impact to the beachgoers and, you know, people on the intercoastal too. You have, that's a lot of, that's a big change and a lot of glare and glazing.
It's also an expensive piece of property and you want as much view as you can, and I
Absolutely, I mean,
understand
that's, they're floor to ceiling, I mean, that's,
that's how my
exactly.
design would be.
so. Like I said, and if there's any other mixed use, areas that we're not focusing on in the charrette too. I think we have a public comment.
Yes, ma'am. I think it's very timely that you have all added this to your agenda today. All of the terms that you've heard Nielsa mention, such as design criteria, guidelines, setbacks, articulation, landscaping, building materials. I was in London once and a brand new Jaguar literally had its trunk melted by the glare from a building. It's very dangerous. But anyway, so you should think about all that because you're gonna be into it up to your neck come next week. In regard to the Rood property, I think you might be stepping into spot zoning if you make it a separate R4, but maybe you could alternatively zone it mixed use, and that might accomplish something along the lines of what the man wanted. And two other things is market and density. Density is not necessarily your enemy, for those of you who are thinking about that. Ask yourself this question. Have you ever gone to London or to Heidelberg in Germany or Paris, okay? Their density blows America right out of the water. It's right up there probably with or just below New York City. But why is it when you walk down those streets that you like it? You're happy with it. It feels good. That is what's called the human
Scale.
form, right?
Human form or human scale.
Yeah, human form. If it feels good, it's not necessarily bad. In other words, like you said, if you're walking down there at Olive Avenue in Okeechobee and the buildings are all, 30 feet tall, 30 stories tall, and some cars going like that and everything with no landscaping along the edges, of course you feel, it doesn't feel right. It's not on a human scale. But in Europe, 5, 6, 7 stories with, brick boulders and granite facades with articulation, you think it's just drop dead gorgeous. It feels fantastic. So it's not necessarily, I think anything that gets above 6 stories starts to lose the human form or scale, but you should definitely do what Nielsa did for, I think it was for R3, but for medium density, that's your biggie. Medium density, see what the others did. Not that you want to copy them, but that's your competition. You want to know, if somebody's doing 32 units per acre and you're at 12 or 18, maybe you want to go to 24, but you don't, you have to do the market numbers. You probably do that for a living. You got to figure out, they have an expectation of profit, the investors do, and the land and the construction, and that turns out how many units you got to have and all of that plays into it. If you don't have all of that at these minimum levels, it's never going to be developed, and you need some development because your tax base needs it. So that's my 2 cents, so thank you.
Tom, the reason I suggested a different zoning there was because if you go to mixed use, now you're opening it up to potential commercial. So that's why I said you keep it residential, but you just create a new residential zone. And I hear what you're saying about going, higher with, maybe some increased densities, but I think that gets back to what do we really want this village? I understand the tax element of it, and that's where I think the redevelopment along US 1 and quite honestly on Beach Road will be very favorable to the village. But I still think west of the intercoastal, we've got to look at it and say, well, what do we want? What do we want this to look like? And if it's going to be a village, I guess I'm not sure I want to go more than 4 stories in any of the areas west of the intercoastal. So that would just be my take on it.
So to me, it sounds like we wanna further this discussion. Yes, no?
I don't think we'll have any pinpoint, we want this, this, and this, unless we're going in the charrette, which I'd love to see what comes out of that, but I love what she started so far, absolutely.
I think Kyle's early comment about it's important to hear what comes out of that charrette in light of what we're talking about now, and then bringing them together.
I don't know that we need to talk about rezoning or creating a new R4 or anything like that. I think the focus should be on the articulation, the landscaping, and the building materials.
Yeah, articulation is important. It's not so much what we want to see, but it limits what they, they could build somewhere like that. It's awful, but there was nothing that we did to prevent it.
Right.
So it's important that we have, there's nothing in there, nothing?
So wherever they want.
Yeah.
So I think we focus on those areas, not the density side of things.
Right. And landscaping, maybe require more open space, all those kinds of things. So, I think, the charrette process is next week,
Yep.
right, or this weekend. So to me, I think it might be helpful if Nilsa can maybe identify the areas that we should look at that aren't being incorporated into the charrette process. Get those identified so we can say yes or no and we'll look at those. And then, I'd also like to know if we do go down this road, what's the cost? Is that under Nilsa's current contract? Is that gonna be extra? We need to consider that too.
You see what call out the areas.
Yeah, I think Nilsa's probably best to identify that she understands, I think, what we wanna do and the buildings that are zoning areas that are applicable to this. So she can identify the areas that would be best for us to focus on that are outside of Treasure Coast Regional Planning.
Let me throw out one more idea. Specifically Country Club, residential redevelopment, homes coming there, and the setbacks that are currently. The bigger homes going up higher, they're gonna be at the 30 feet, they're closer to all the whole property line. What about reducing the setback
On the front?
from the back and sides,
Reducing it or increasing it?
increasing it? Reduce the size of the home.
Let me say that again, so I can understand visually. So not so close to the
The
road.
homes get
No,
bigger, so
they're getting closer to their
increasing
neighbors and to their
Yeah,
backyard.
I noticed.
So
I hit a
increasing
wall in our code when I bring it up.
the setback, which would prevent them from building as close to the other property, neighbor's
Okay.
property.
Keith, do we run
Larger
into-
space,
do we
You mean
run
the
into
side,
an
the
issue?
side,
side and
So
rear.
you're not,
and rear.
Do
you're
we
not
run
looking
in-
at the window.
Do we run into an issue there in terms of diminution of private property rights?
Well, depends what you do. You're talking some design standard kind of
Setback.
Right, but there's examples where if it's a 1-story house, the setback would be such. If it's a 2-story house, the first floor could be something, the second story might wedding cake in a little. There's certainly things you can do that are defensible, but if you go too far, you could.
Somebody let you know.
Just like, you're not gonna impact density because it's, you're basically 1 dwelling unit per property, but it's a similar issue if you're taking away vested rights. That's when you start having Bert J. Harris implications. So I don't think it's doable, but we need to look at,
It's gotta be done carefully.
it's gotta be done with some
I would
deliberation.
say-
I mean, the bigger houses really that are being built are on the golf course, obviously on the water, and that's not affecting anyone behind them, right?
Well, they're not all, there's a house on Country Club now,
Yeah, I know, there's
They're coming.
it's not on the golf
And it's not a
course.
bad thing, it's just, it's gonna start looking really
Is that something we wanna talk about?
close. Sometimes I think about the safety, and I'm not an officer or a firefighter, but sometimes I wonder, when you look at the two houses and they each have their setback and they're meeting code, but then they usually have a fence or a really wide hedge in between. Sometimes I think about the safety of how do our responders get back there if they have to get to a backyard somehow.
Break through the fence.
Yeah, and there's, you're
It's
not
just
trying
some of them are
to
getting so
make
tight.
sure, hedges don't get broken, you just go through it, yeah. In an emergency situation.
Didn't you go through a fence?
So that's kind of what I was thinking about when that got broke, because that property got bought and they're building it, and
That's the house, yeah.
that's when you had to run into the backyard and get through that window or door, and but that was an older house. I had a lot of room for you guys to maneuver around.
Yeah, well, I mean.
Homeowner's responsibility too, to a certain degree.
Right.
I know, I try to think of just all the angles, like what are we wanting our residential area to turn into? We wanna make sure it's staying in the village with people who can afford the rebuy on them too. So people
Yeah,
find
I
this
gotta
home
say-
and move out.
You guys both have mentioned we wanna keep this a village, I don't know what that means. Cause everyone has their own definition, right? So if you have your own definition of what the village means to you, then to just say we wanna keep this a village, you and I may not agree with that. So I don't know what that means to you.
It's a mixture of physical size of buildings, roads, landscaping, green space, parks. It's making sure we're not getting too big. And then the other half, it does have to do with the market, which is unfortunate. I know we've been talking about that. So I would love the village to be able to hold multiple types of people and demographic. Like I don't want to see everyone get priced out to where we can't have teachers or officers or firefighters or the guy that just owns a small mom and pop restaurant. And because everything's turning into like these $1 million homes, like are we gonna turn to a mini mansion?
Yeah, no,
Big
I agree,
village?
but I gotta be honest with you, I'm sorry with this getting derailed a little bit, and that's my fault, I asked that question, but when I was a police officer, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I could not afford a house in Tequesta. I was the only police officer who lived in Tequesta, and that's because of the job that my wife had. We've never been a cheap place to live, I mean, the starter homes here have always been way more than starter homes anywhere else. And I think we're going up just like everyone else is.
Because it's kind of playing into the
Agreed.
market, but
And I don't think that's a problem.
I mean,
I think it's just reality.
Just so that, to Mr. Johnson's comment, so that the council is aware, strictly speaking, in Florida, the terms city, town, and village are completely interchangeable, they mean the exact same thing. So to the extent that you want to put your own stamp on what village means, I mean, that might be something you do through your strategic planning or other process, but strictly speaking, the term city means the same exact thing as the term village.
Yeah.
From a legal standpoint, so, which doesn't prohibit you from, again, saying what you want the village of Tequesta to be, but just keep that.
we use that term small town feel too
Yeah,
a lot
right,
of times, not just village.
Well, I think I'd like to wrap this up and move on to the next topic, because we still have two that are probably two more that are gonna be lengthy conversations. I think adding Kyle's suggestion to list is appropriate. Like I said, we're gonna talk about it again, and I think, so I said maybe identify the areas that we should be looking at, and then cost implications to do this, and then maybe also understanding what we're trying to achieve, maybe, present some examples of things that we could do that would improve upon aesthetics and us having some more architectural guidelines without any legal implications or, encroaching on private property rights.
This is a good timing because we are in budget season. So,
This is true.
Well played.
Okay. Good to move on to the next topic?
Yes.
Okay. Agenda item 2, discussion on public notices. So Nilsa, you have the floor again.
yes, so I prepared a memo for your consideration with regard to the public notices. So basically, the memo includes what do we do in the village for public notices. As right now, we do public notices for site plan reviews for the Planning and Zoning Board, for the Village Council. We do public notices for variance application, a special exception use, so the memo go through that. With regard to the Development Review Committee, as you all know, once we receive an application, the first step that we do is we distribute the drawings to our review committee, which is law enforcement, fire, building, engineering, traffic. So, and we all actually will meet here and we'll review the plans. We provide comments to the applicant and then they resubmit and we start the process until it's in compliance with code or they need to go for a variance, and then after all of that goes to the planning and zoning board and then finally goes to the village council for site plans. With regard to the development review committee, we do not advertise the meetings with the review committee, and actually I call and I talk personally with planners from Juno Beach and North Palm Beach, and then, and Jupiter, Juno Beach and Jupiter. And the development review committees, they are technical meetings. So they do not advertise that. So they put together an agenda and they put it at their lobby or something, So it's not open to the public, they are technical meetings, because the truth is there might be a lot of changes yet to that project until it's ready for planning and zoning board or council. So there's a lot of back and forth when it's being reviewed. So that's in terms of the development review committee specifically. With regard to site plan reviews, variances, and special exceptions, the other municipalities that I spoke with, Jupiter and Juno Beach, they do the posting. First, they do the advertising on the Palm Beach Post like we do it now, but in addition to that, they put a big sign on the property. So when you are driving around, you can see that there will be a land use amendment, or there will be a site plan review, or there will be a variance coming through. Currently, our code does not provide for that. So for variances, we prepare a letter and we mail to 300 feet around the property. So all the property owners, they will receive a letter that there will be a variance or there will be a special exception use. And also we advertise in the Palm Beach Post. So it's up to this council if you consider changing the code, providing for further public notices.
So do the other municipalities also do the mailing, or do they just post the sign?
No,
on
they
the
do
property?
for variances and special exception, yes, they do the mailing.
Okay.
And in addition to that, they do the posting, the sign on the property.
I think putting the sign on the property is not a bad idea. So it would just be that one extra element, right? So is
Commercial or residential? Do they put signs on property, residential properties too? Is it just
On residential single homes, no, single homes not. Mainly mixed uses and, multifamily. Obviously, if North Palm is bringing a tower of 20 stories, they will put a sign. Multifamilies and commercial and mixed uses.
I don't have any problem with the way we're currently doing it.
And a sign would be on the property for a while, right? Through the whole process?
No, well, that depends. Usually the sign is to advertise that there will be a hearing. Usually it's put there 15 days before the hearing or 10 days before the hearing. So the people that are driving around, they know that that property will be under consideration in this upcoming planning and zoning board or council meeting. And they will call the planner and they say, hey, I want to know more about it, so.
Do they advertise it for a DRC meeting though?
No, none of the municipalities, the two municipalities that I spoke with, and it's pretty standard in the planning work, I don't know any municipality that advertise. There might be some, but I personally don't know one that advertise for DRC meetings because they are technical meetings.
So you're saying they publish in the paper,
For what? For the variances,
Right.
for the special exception,
Right.
and for the site plans.
in the context of what we're talking about right now in terms of what other municipalities you said we're doing. They publish in the paper, okay? You said they send out a mailer just like we do,
For variances and a special exception,
and then they also post on the property.
yes,
So they take that third step.
yes,
That's the only thing we're not doing relative to others.
yes.
I wouldn't have a problem posting a sign. I think if people don't see, first of all, a lot of people don't get the paper anymore because they go to the internet and they don't subscribe to the post, so they're not gonna, a lot of people won't see it there. If you get a mailer and you're within 300 feet, that's great, but if you've got an interest and you're outside of that, you might not be aware of it, so if there's a sign, you drive by it, you see it, it's just one more way of kind of covering your bases, so.
For variance and special exceptions.
Yeah, other municipalities, they also put the posting for site plan reviews in addition to the variances and a special exception.
And the site plan reviews would be at P and Z, usually for us.
Yes, P and Z and then council, both,
Okay.
so,
Could be up to a while.
I know, I totally feel when the residents say we didn't know until it was at council's feet for a vote. I mean, I totally feel for them, because that's how I felt before I was on council. I was thinking about this over the weekend. What would your opinion be on what is the most effective time for a resident or residents to come and speak on their interest or concerns about a project? Is it P and Z, like the very first review?
yes, P and Z is a great venue for public participation. And in fact, we have had projects where we had PAC P and Z meetings, and it's a good venue because residents can hear it for first time. The P and Z board can weigh in, and then, the applicant will really feel, will really listen what is the residents, and they can have time to, modify before they go to council,
Okay, so if residents came in with factual backing, this isn't working and this is why, and they're coming in with proof from the code, why they're showing the faults to P and Z, then P and Z can either vote yes or no, and it would be more effective.
Yeah, it's I always will wade into further communication, further notice, further, more is more in terms of not letting people know what is happening.
So it almost sounds like to me, we should really be pushing residents to start with get to P and Z before it even gets to us. Start encouraging them to go to P and Z and start paying attention and give their feedback at that moment. Because I listen to P and Z, so I hear if there is anyone that comes, and then I was able to follow what P and Z members are thinking and what their opinions are. Maybe that's a chance for us to get ahead of it before we have to vote on it, and then we're sitting in that meeting, breaking it down. Sometimes it's too late.
I'll say, every municipality that I've worked in and I've done a site plan approval process through does it like the town of Jupiter, or in Juneau, they do the posting. I've never worked or done a project in one that doesn't like we do. So I think in what I said at, I don't remember if I brought this up at council meeting or previous workshop, but I think maybe the way we were doing it worked before, but now we're seeing this influx of new projects and redevelopments. I think it's appropriate to update our process accordingly. So I'd be interested to compare it to North Palm, Rivera, Lake Park. West Palm's probably not applicable. There's big city compared to us, but they all do it. So I think it's appropriate for us to do it as well.
So are you in favor, I'm not against the sign if we're advertising we have something coming to P and Z for review. Are you proposing that or getting them to DRC?
No, the public notice requirements.
Okay.
Referenced here.
Okay, I'm just confused.
So adding a sign to the
Yes.
property is what, it sounds like that's the major difference that we're not doing.
Yes, we are not
Now
doing
that has to meet a size ordinance, right?
We do it,
Yeah, we need to amend, right now, I actually print out the code for you for the DRC. So if you wanna see what is exactly on the code now on the DRC section, you wanna put it?
Aside from size, my
You know,
other,
it doesn't say anything with regard to signage or anything on the DRC.
my biggest question would be is what color would it be? Would it be bright yellow?
It's usually they
White.
are white
White letters.
with black letters, that's all what it is, the signage. They are pretty standard, the
I know,
postings.
I've seen
Yeah, it's
yellow
always,
though. I've seen yellow though.
you're seeing yellow,
Martin County's yellow.
Martin County
I'm not
has
saying I
yellow.
want
The
yellow.
yellow one.
We sure do.
We can pick that, so it's not
Seen one
atrocious.
time.
But usually it's up, like, I think the max I've had to do them is 30 days before the meeting, I think. So, I mean, they're only up for a short amount of time too, and then they're required to take them down.
You know, I mean, our fire trucks are yellow, there's a reason for that.
I know.
High
Do you
visibility.
see it?
I mean, if we want to put these signs up and add this, cause we want exposure, let's not go, well, you know,
Blend in.
you have to have corners that, you know, have, you know, whatever. So let's,
I was just asking, we've had lots of conversations about signs in the past 4 years.
yeah, I mean,
Sign
So you want it to stand out?
It's the idea.
as opposed to no one seeing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it has to be up
That's
by
the
the road,
point.
so you can, that's what
I'm not saying it has to be yellow, I'm just saying let's not decide on the color scheme yet.
no, but that's why I wanna ask Neil, so the size, the color, and kind of where it would be, like, it obviously shouldn't be too set back, cause you wanna be able to see it, kinda like when we talked about the realtor signs, we didn't need them halfway up the yard, we need them
Right.
to be able to be seen.
For example, in Jupiter, the code, and I'm reading from the memo that I provided, is a posting of public notice of request for approval shall be posted by the applicant, agent, or property owner in a conspicuous place, clearly visible from accessible public property on or around the property, which is the subject of the application. So, I'm sure Keith and I can work on the language if
This is definitely not a wheel to be reinvented, there are, as you all
Very
said, there are
specific.
so many examples, and without having looked at them, my guess is that they're all very, very similar. So if the council's consensus is to give direction to bring you back some language, that's not a problem at all.
Public comment?
Yeah, I'm confused about the DRC. I swear I heard at a recent meeting where Keith rendered an opinion where DRC was required to have public meetings per
So
his review of that in some recent case or something.
the DRC, it's not the question of it being a technical review or staff review. The issue is what happens at that meeting. If, you know, generally a staff level informal staff meeting does not implicate the sunshine law. What the courts look at though is, do the individuals attending the meeting have decision-making authority, and is any formal action taken at DRC? So if DRC is reviewing the applications, pointing out things that need to happen, and then the application moves on regardless of, you know, not that, you know, any motions are being made or action being taken, then it's, does not implicate the sunshine law. If the staff members, when they sit at the DRC table, now are assuming a decision-making role and taking action and actually requiring things to happen before it moves beyond the DRC level, there are some court cases that do indicate that if that's what's going on, then the sunshine law would be implicated. I have never sat in a village DRC meeting, so I can't tell you exactly what happens in those meetings. So if we do not want those to be public meetings, then they can't, whatever happens there has to be by way of giving information, not by way of taking action. That really is the key.
Keep define taking action though. So for example, if somebody comes to the DRC, they're reviewing it to make sure it's in compliance with all the codes and all that. that's a review process. And they're giving information or recommendations back to the developer that these are the things you need to do to bring yourself into compliance, okay? So again, it's a review process, it's a recommendation, this is what you need to do. And then they're gonna move it to P&Z, where they're gonna make a decision, and then it's gonna go to council, where the council makes the decision. So, again, when we say action, I guess,
So it seems to me, application, there's a roundtable of discussion, police have comments, fire has comments, planning and zoning has comments. You need, in order to be compliant with the code, you should do this, do that, do the other thing. You will be on the planning and zoning agenda on this date, you need to make these changes, we'll see you
or
then.
you have to ask for a
That,
variance.
to me, that's providing information. If rather it is, we want you to change this setback, or we want you to change this elevation. Board agree, yes, you're not moving forward until we see this has changed. To me, that's some decision-making authority, and you're taking action and not allowing that application to proceed until the action that you have taken has been met. That off the top of my head would be an example of the difference between providing information and taking action.
So let me just add one other element to that, because we've started this process where we said developers could come to the council in advance with a concept and ideas. We give them feedback, we give them some guidance or direction or input as to what we would like to see happen. So then they come back, modify their plans, take it to the development review committee. They're reviewing in light of what we've said, in light of what they think our intentions are, et cetera. They're providing that information, but I guess the question goes to you, Nils. Are you making hard and fast decisions, or are you saying, hey, here's what we're recommending, here's what we think you need to do? Ultimately, at the end of this process, you're gonna take it to P&Z and the council. They're the ones who are making the decision. So in light of what Keith said, how would you describe the process that you go through?
Exactly the way you just say it. I mean, we are reviewing right now 2 projects, and we just, it's all it's writing, we submit a report, to the applicant. And it's all there, and we basically, each reviewer, law enforcement, fire, they provide us their comment. So we gather all their comments, we put our comments, and then if it is not per code, we just say consider this, consider that, because it's, or if it is code, revise setback, setback is such and such, so, or there are considerations. So, and then we are in the middle of reviewing 2 projects now.
If it doesn't meet code, can they continue to move it forward?
Basically, they have 2 choices, revise per our recommendation or ask for a variance. So it's always, at the end of the day, is the developer decision. At the end of
Well,
the
they can
day.
still move it forward.
Right, that's what I'm saying, but the ultimate decision, if they want the variance or whatever, they come to us and,
Yes.
Yeah.
They decide.
so Keith, what do you?
Well, I just, one more to add on to that though, is if they were to give action instead of information, I mean, is that allowable? If it's, and then the right thing would be to have a public notice, it sounds like. I mean, is there anything wrong with that? Are they allowed to do that and it just needs to be public notice? And then if, say we do.
What is that?
Well, you said if they give information back, it doesn't need to be public notice, but if it's the action, if it's more action, like you need to change this, that's when you said there's been situations where.
Example, I mean, the practical reality is the developer's either gonna fix it, because if they don't and it moves forward, it's gonna get denied, and they know that, or they're gonna apply for the variance, and then it's gonna go through that process, but to me, that's providing information.
So her committee's not making a final determination. She's just giving them, like I said, information, recommendations, and then they decide how to proceed.
So I guess one way to answer the question would be to ask it this way. If the DRC staff members rather than sitting at a table like this, if they sat in their office and did the exact same thing, would you accomplish the exact same goal?
Yes, and in fact, during COVID, we were not even close meeting here. So we all did our reviews, each one on their office, and then they just provided to us the written comments, and we put it all together.
Compiled it.
We compile it, and even when we do that, even is exactly the same. The reason we meet most of the time here or on the chambers is just because we learn from the fire, and that the fire might have something to do with math, with the water, so it's a very enriching process to be in the same room. So, but after that little meeting, they all send us the written comments, and then we just compile that along with our own comments. What I have talked with, like I said, I called Junovich and I called Jupiter. They do not advertise DRC meetings. And I asked them why. Because they are technical meetings and there is a lot of things that's gonna be changing yet,
And,
That's what they say.
to Mr. Bradford's original comment on an opinion that I rendered, I'm looking for our code on DRC, but my
It's
recollection,
here.
so.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all
There was some language in there that could be construed as decision-making where it talks about basically it says the committee members submit their reports to the community development director and then you're sort of acting as the gatekeeper and you're making a decision on whether that can proceed or not. That is the language I think that that could be construed as implicating the sunshine law, because rather than acting as a staff member in that case, you're taking action even though it's not a motion. You're deciding, all right, this is not going forward because you haven't done this, or this is going forward because you've done everything that's been asked of you. So that is the concerning language in our code. Now, if the practice is different, and the practice is that it's truly an informational providing exercise, then we should change our code to reflect that and eliminate that concern.
There's another issue that goes with this, and that is, put DRC aside for a moment and fast forward to the first public presentation of the project, okay? If you dumb down the DRC process, where it's just, okay, here's what we think you ought to do, Mr. Developer, and then they don't do it and it's up to them and it comes to you, you are gonna create what is currently lacking in your development review when you're in a public meeting. And that's where staff makes a recommendation about approval or disapproval of the project, tells you the shortcomings of the project, and you do that today, answers question. I mean, it's much more robust than what you're seeing today. So you can either be robust on one end or the other or both, but somewhere you gotta do that and tell somebody, this is the way we want it, and this is why.
Yeah, here's the current language. It says, if the application is deemed by the Development Review Committee to be in compliance with village regulations and requirements, the application and all exhibits and additional comments will be submitted by the Community Development Director or designee to the Planning and Zoning Board for further review. So that is the language in the code that seems to, if not expressly state, certainly imply that there are decision-making activities going on at the DRC level. Now again, if that's not what's happening, we should fix the code. If that is what's happening and that's how we want this process to continue, then the court cases that have talked about staff level review, in my view, do seem to require even that staff level review to be a sunshine meeting, because staff is taking off its staff hat and putting on a decision-making hat and really using some authority that's been delegated to it from the council to the appointed board members. So That is the concern.
Yeah, let me put your minds at rest
Isn't
too.
that their job though?
When you give a notice, the public rarely attends, rarely. It's the developer who is there to make sure they can answer the DRC's questions. Because Palm Beach does it, Martin County does it, and there used to be a bunch of others, but a lot more have started doing it since those cases came out that Keith is referring to.
And I will tell you, I'm aware of at least one municipality that has changed its DRC process to actually, committee members don't meet in a meeting. That's why I kind of asked that question I asked. They sit in their offices, they do their individual review, submit their comments to the developer, and on it goes. So that was their attempt to work around this issue.
I mean, I started working here in 2010, October 2010, and from that point on, all the DRC meetings, the developer were never present. You know, historically, they were never present. Again, we review it, we put together in writing all our comments, and we email it to the developer, and then the developer meets one-on-one with the different departments to clarify their comments, and that's the way we do it. But we have no problem if we need to advertise, and if the developer wants to be present at the meeting, you know, it's not a problem. And we're gonna need to do an agenda, advertise, and then do minutes. That's gonna have a.
Well, it's important that you have a meeting of all of the participants. I'll tell you the prime reason. You have the most knowledge of anybody, and this fellow here whose name I forget, but what's good about you being present and giving an overview is individual department representatives do not always fully understand what the essence of this project is. That's the upside to having a meeting.
No, it's a good thing. Believe me, during COVID, we truly miss being together in a conference room. So now we are happy to be, the DRC is back to being a real meeting.
And let me say this. If it's decided, well, let me say it this way. Just because it's a noticed meeting that the public can attend does not mean you have to get bogged down with public comment. You could allow the public to attend. You don't have to take public comment at a DRC meeting. The law requires you to offer an opportunity for public comment at least one time at some point during the decision-making process. That doesn't have to be the DRC. It can be at the Planning and Zoning Board. It can be at the Village Council meeting. So you could allow people to sit and eat popcorn and watch and listen, but you don't have to get bogged down with public comment at that point. In fact, if it's a technical review, not sure what that might not be. I tend to agree with Nilsa. It's probably not the best time to take public comment. So public meeting does not necessarily require public comment to be taken.
Well, I think you nailed the question. The question is, how is the current committee functioning? So if it is actively making a decision as you described it, then we probably need to publicly notice it. If it's not, and that's not the process, then we need to change the code so the code reflects the process. So Nilsa?
I would be super against you guys not meeting together and like working in silos, because I think we hire you guys because you're the expertise in this area, and if you take away the collaboration, it's gonna affect the review process. So I would not be in favor of you guys doing it individually, and there's a sharp eye on all of our local municipalities when it comes to development, and I think the more we can do to say we took all the steps necessary to notify public, nothing was missed. Like, I don't know what the disadvantage is there. Again, I would like to know if there's cost implications, if, does a clerk have to sit there? Like, I would like to know that stuff so we can make a decision.
So, and I can chime in on that, if it's a public meeting, then yes, minutes have to be taken and recorded. That doesn't mean you have to have page after page of descriptive minutes. You can have topical minutes. Meeting was called to order, application blah 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 was considered, there was discussion by the committee members, comments were made, the applicant was given the next date to do something, move on to that. It doesn't have to be anything more, the minutes don't have to be and in my opinion, shouldn't be a transcript. That creates all kinds of other issues in my opinion. I'm a big fan of topical minutes that just kind of put it short and sweet.
But the meeting would be recorded.
So legally, it doesn't have to be recorded. It's our practice in the village to audio record the meetings, and that there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And those could be available for anyone to listen to, just like this meeting or any other meeting that we have.
I do like the idea, like no public comment in that meeting. I mean, there's things I think we can do to pare it down a little bit.
I like the idea of popcorn.
Is the village gonna provide that?
See, here we go. I don't know.
I know how to
Never
pop
mind.
popcorn.
You just read it.
I know the best of
It is
snacks in my
And
experience.
quite honestly, having another opportunity for the developer to sit there with you guys, if they choose to come, that's only gonna help the process as well, in my opinion.
We have no problem with that. And some municipalities, the developers do come to the meeting, they just don't advertise, they save the money not to publicize on the Palm Beach Post, basically, so anyway, but if this council decides we can to publish on the Post.
Does it have to be in the Post?
Well, no,
No.
again, this meeting was not advertised in the Palm Beach Post. You would post notice of that meeting just like any other meeting, it doesn't, no, you don't have to run an ad in the
We
paper.
don't exactly advertise our P and Z that great either.
Well, that's
PNC, yes,
Right,
we
they
do
would just-
advertise.
I know.
You're about to get a sign.
I know, but I'm saying, we didn't do paid advertising.
One of our strategic goals is to communicate more, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I'm all in favor if it gets the people aware of what's coming, rather than going, oh, no, there's a meeting tonight, we all have to go, because they're voting tonight. And then we get bombarded with, a lot of times, really good feedback, which we should have had.
Yeah,
Weeks
it's
or
like
months
last
ago.
minute.
And the other practical reality is, my understanding is these meetings occur during the day, so.
Yes, the
Unless-
development review
unless
committee
you're-
meeting, yes.
There's nothing better to do, you're not working, it's unlikely.
Do we make them at 6 p.m.?
It's like, no.
So you're saying
I don't think this council can, and Mr. Allen could.
the code as it currently reads, you're saying would require the public meeting, and it sounds like that's what everybody's.
If we're following the practice that's described in the code, in my view, it describes some decision-making activity that is going on. So my advice would be, if that's what we're doing, if that's the process we want to have in our code, then those meetings should be noticed.
Publicized and noticed as well.
Yeah, noticed and.
I don't think there's need for comment. I think if there's someone that wanted to make a comment, they can reach out to one of us and say, hey, FYI.
Well, plus P and Z gives them an opportunity, and then the council meeting gives them an opportunity, so.
But I do hear what Neil's saying with that DRC group. They are most likely 99% gonna have to give feedback to fix a lot of things. So kind of let them get it together as a package before the public can comment on it, because they're gonna have to make their decision on it too as they sit and listen with their popcorn.
Okay.
Okay, so do we wanna draft up what the process will look like?
And we're advocating for no public comment during the development.
The DRC meeting, yeah, I like that, like no public
Come
comment.
through the P and Z or come through.
Well, but then how does that work though if the developer and the consultants could likely show up with the developer too, could they comment?
We'll
We draft
Okay.
something,
Thank you.
then you want this to include the on-site poster
yes.
Yeah.
as well. Okay.
So it would it be staff and then the applicant, or applicant and related parties that could then offer input or commentary or interact?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
I want to go.
Okay,
can have something back to you in May. I don't think we'll make the April.
Next week.
yeah,
Tomorrow.
May's reasonable.
Tomorrow, Villa.
We'll see these in May, yeah.
Another workshop or to the council?
I would say send it to council. All right, moving on to agenda item 3, strategic plan. Jeremy, you're on deck.
Strategic plan is a vital tool for us to use to ensure that council conveys and, meets the organizational goals. We renew our strategic plan annually. Some initiatives may be new, some may be transitioned off. There are initiatives that may span several years. The plan should align with our comprehensive plan over a period of time. The strategic plan focuses on 5 key pillars: organizational excellence, public infrastructure, economic development, safe, livable, and family-friendly, sustainable environmental stewardship. So these are supported by the mission and vision of the council. In your packet, you will have the strategic plan that we've been working off of as the initiatives. In red is what council has submitted to me as far as comments for discussion. Once we, I guess, agree on what should be on there, what shouldn't be on there, we will put together a final draft version for council to ultimately vote on. And so other than that, outside of this, the whirlwind of activities that our staff do, we will be working off the strategic plan for the initiatives and budgeting process. With that, turn it over to you, Mayor, and however you wanna go through these items, we can go through them and discussion, and whatever council members provided feedback can maybe provide that to the full council.
Would you want me to stick around?
I would love to, Keith, but you don't have to.
Happy to.
Unless council has anything else that they'd love you to do. You can go too, Melissa.
You let me
Guys,
know.
thank you.
You let me know if I need to. Thank you.
Jeremy, can you pull up the organizational excellence? I guess we'll start there, sort of. So do we only wanna talk about the new stuff added in red, or I guess anyone can chime up and revisit old items too?
Yeah.
You can challenge my IT abilities here. What you want?
Try the upper right next to the box, is that
It's a little bright,
the
isn't
box there? Is that
Which one? Malware? They took away my other side though.
Perfect.
Alright, so the improved grant writing skills, that was mine. I think a couple of our grants, the feedback we've gotten on how they were weighed compared to the people that were awarded, to me just kind of made it obvious. I think we could improve on our grant writing skills. I know we do have some grant writers that we use. I know sometimes staff does it, and I think they do the best job they can, but that's not their expertise in, grant writing skills. And I think that if we can hone in on that a little bit and have better packets to submit with that have a lot more backup and verification and everything you need to convince the state or whoever you're getting the money from to give it to you, I think we might have some more success there. So that one was mine, if anyone wants to.
You still have 2 grant writers, correct?
Which grant writer are you referencing when you say this?
I honestly don't, between the two, I've not seen many grants that they've written or really know the pros and cons of either. Does one have a specialty in one area and another doesn't? I honestly don't know much about the 2 grant writers we use. And I know some that, staff has done as well, so.
So you think maybe better grants submitted, requests would be, make it so that maybe, let me ask this, do you think that there's a possibility that we're not getting the grants that we're not getting because the state or whoever doesn't think we should? I mean, so you think better?
Yeah, because they
Right,
weigh
right.
hundreds of people probably, right, apply for these grants,
Yeah,
so they
well,
weigh
yeah.
them and they have all these categories and they weigh them, and, I think from what I've seen, and this is just my personal opinion, I think there could be just more, backup research, verification, justification that we really did our research, here's our plan, this is why we need, like, please give us this money. And I think if we had, that was a little more robust, like, it might improve our scoring and we might have a better chance.
I think you're right, so some of that stuff they're saying just doesn't exist.
We just, like, we're
we're not-
scored,
Right, but what I'm saying is, we're not, these requests, they're not, they're not as, like you said, robust as they should be.
The submission
My opinion.
packages could be stronger.
How long have we been doing it that way?
Well, now
I'm not
Ryan,
sure.
who has worked with Greg for many years, has been, and again, I don't know if he's been, Jeremy, you have to answer this. I don't know if he's focused still primarily on Parks and Rec, but he's had some success with Park and Rec through the years. I mean, we've received numerous grants, and we had also received a grant to acquire the property that is the Lighthouse School for the Arts, which we ended up having to pass on because they backed away from their early commitment on us on that. We had a $500,000 grant there that would have helped us acquire that property several years ago, but between the two, I haven't looked at, the last time we got an update on our grant status. So I don't know if it's Ryan, or if it's the woman we've engaged, or if it's a mixture of both.
How do you measure success in grant writing? I don't know enough.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like,
Well, I don't know what the success-
can you say, hey, you know what, that municipality did need that more than we did, and like, that's a good question, how is this quantified, or is it just, hey, we want as much as possible, let's continue to, let's try better?
Well, my takeaway from what you said, Molly, is you just felt like there was things lacking in the package that put us at a disadvantage in terms of the review process.
If that's true, that needs to be fixed.
My question is, are successful grant writers, do they have to be exclusive? Or could we go and kind of poach one that's successful? Because there are some small towns that are getting some really awesome stuff.
and then, like, another example too, and I didn't look into the exact project, but at the, you were there, the League of Cities Journalmen, I think it's not fully approved yet, but I think Delray Beach got some parks that did make the list to be considered for funding and ours didn't. I'm like, well, why? I would love to see their packet and see what they submitted that we didn't. And what the recent one was, what was it, the roads for Country Club? And a lot of the areas that we scored low in, I felt like we were lacking on the Tequesta Park application too. So like I said, I see a small trend, but it's kind of a trend, and clearly I don't have a ton of history on our grant writing.
It's kind of hard to measure though, because like you said,
I'm
it depends on what.
But those were staff grant.
Well, Tequesta Park was different, because that was seeking an appropriation through the budget process, so that wasn't a grant.
Right.
So,
Same
Still the same
process.
concept. It is great.
well, no, that's a totally different process, because it gets into the legislative process, and you've got the state senate and the state legislative bodies, and you're right, there's politics comes into that, and it is a large factor in that. So I would take that piece aside and distinguish that from the grant process. I'm not saying that.
I don't, well, if the concept's the same though.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying there could have been done more done there, but it is a very different process.
Are you saying that we should hire a position as an employee to grant write?
I'm not saying, I'm saying we need, if everyone agrees, then it's something we should talk about. I think, didn't you say Lake Park has their own in-house person? I mean, I'm not saying we bring staff on, but like, we can explore different options.
So Parks has always used Ryan from RMK. He's been successful with some grants. I think we have 2 of them that are active right now, $2 $50,000
Oh,
grants.
I meant Lake Park.
Huh?
Lake Park?
Lake Park,
That's right.
they brought in an in-house grant writer, got $11 million. They were obviously a little further ahead in their process than we are with our stormwater. So that was very successful for them to bring that in. You asked the question, Country Club Roads was done by Kimley Horn. They have an in-house grant writer. I did most of Tequesta Park. I mean, and some of that got dumbed down as it went up through the process. Jack Corey recommended some of the language be changed and turned. So, obviously that's a different process than a grant writer per se. We could have paid somebody and took the chance of not getting anything anyway. So, I mean, it's, I'm open to whatever the council, feels appropriate. We do have, I guess, 5 different firms through our engineering services contract that we can use. We can choose not to use Kimley Horn for grant writing anymore in the future.
And
We
they,
can use another firm.
they're not all the same. Like some you pay, and then some take a percentage of a grant they're awarded.
Some do a little of both.
and some do a little bit of both. See, I'm never opposed to, I mean, if you're not getting what you need, try something different.
I agree.
But I'd like to kind of see, so we saw at that lunch meeting, there was some small towns getting some really big cool stuff, and I couldn't help but sit there like, wow, how come we didn't
So you
get
gotta,
that?
there's another part of grants you
I wanna
gotta
find out who
realize.
wrote those.
There's LMI is a big part of grants, which is your low median income level. So these grants, they score high, we score terrible on those. So just know that that's a big factor in Wayne, and almost every grant has that number in there. Even with Country Club, I was very skeptical about even applying for that because one of the factors in there was LMI, and I asked Kinley Horn specifically, and they said, well, we'll try to make up for it in other areas. You guys are going to score low in this section. So just keep in mind that when you see small municipalities, Lake Park, they score very high on LMI. So
They're trying to rebuild and rebrand. If we can just figure out kind of.
we will always score low on LMI.
But that's why we need a really good creative person though, who can.
But that was my very first point. Are we not getting these grants because there are other municipalities that they deem more deserving than us?
Yeah.
Or is it the lack of grant writing?
But the road one though, like where we score low, that wasn't all because of LMI.
Not all, no.
So that's why, I mean, that is a factor, but there's other factors that we score low on that don't relate to that, so.
Didn't Kinley bring the idea of the grant to us?
Doug was working with them on trying to find grants, so I don't know if they found it, but Doug's idea was, hey, go find us something that we can apply for. And that's the one.
I mean, would it make sense to have, I don't know who this person would be, Ryan or somebody else, have somebody come in and actually sit with the council and actually maybe better educate us on process, what's involved, the scoring, the structure for these different grants, and give us a better understanding of how it all works and how all the pieces come together, and see if there is a pathway forward that we can move on to enjoy greater success. Tom, I don't know what you, I guess with Palm Beach, I don't know if you guys really
Oh, we did.
look for grants that often, but
I can share the secret that we discovered maybe 10, 15 years ago. It was this. So you identify where you're regularly and routinely going to seek grant money. Let's take, for example, FDOT for, circulation of sidewalks and landscaping, the Department of Forestry, recreation. Name those key ones you think you're gonna go to on a regular basis, and contact the staff and ask the key person on the staff, not necessarily the head of the department, but whoever actually gets and scores grants and so forth, and they will tell you their top 3 favorite grant writers. And they love those grant writers. I mean, and if you use one of those grant writers, that gets you closer. Definitely gets you closer. But generally speaking, Jeremy is correct. If your standard of living here is very high. Palm Beach did a lot of things, like a bridge, costs $90 million, or undergrounding's $120 million. Well, income is a lesser component to something like that.
I see improvement from year to year on the grant. I mean, going from 1.6 to 1.75. Or is that backwards? Doing backwards.
That's backwards. We went down.
I don't know if that's a good measurement either. So,
Well, I think, we went down because, the funds that were received in 2021 were the ARPA funds, so we received a huge
it's all
chunk
ARPA.
of money in that. I think, just from, the feedback, and we can use somebody different other than Kinley Horn for some of the build back resilience stuff that we're looking at right now. Kinley Horn was helping us look at that, but if we feel like we could do better, we can pick another firm that we have. We have 2 or 3 other engineering firms that have grant writing ability within them. If that's the easiest path to resistance.
I think just making sure we have a good fit. And that, the applications are justified well.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on OE1? Alright, OE2. Not sure whose comment that was.
It's probably mine.
Yeah,
So, yep, I still think we should head towards the 3 month, of expenditures versus the 2, and we should work on that.
I thought we were.
Yeah, I'm on that same page, and
Yeah,
I
for
think we're
sure.
already on that track too. But I agreed to stay on the track.
That's it, just wanna keep it on the radar.
The only thing I would say there is that the question is how aggressive are we, because we know we still have a lot of infrastructure needs, and having the 3 months is nice, but addressing some of the infrastructure needs that still exist, I think is also important. So I would agree that we'd wanna continue to move that direction, but I'd do it incrementally and make sure that we're addressing some of the other infrastructure issues that we have before us. I think that they're probably more important at this point.
Always moving forward with it, year over year, as long as we're moving forward with it year over
Yeah.
year. Getting better, closer.
Okay, moving on, OE3, this one was mine. I know we kind of work in silos because we're supposed to, obviously, because Sunshine, when we go to, you know, different committee meetings, I thought it might be a good idea if we report to Jeremy and he can kind of do like a monthly report, so we're all on the same page. And, you know, I think we all attend these meetings because we choose our committees, which I think is gonna be on the next council agenda, because obviously we can't all go to them. But I think we all should know what's going on within the community, so just a suggestion. I don't wanna cause more work for Jeremy or us having to give him feedback on our meetings, but I think it'd be good for us to all be in the know.
He doesn't want an extra report.
Love it. But I think, you know, I mean, I can do that in a weekly format or a monthly format. If you go to a meeting outside of Tequesta, if you send it to me, I can do it in a recap, and do it in a monthly format so everybody knows. And maybe it's through the council monthly report, or, you know, if you guys prefer weekly, I mean, we'll start it at a monthly level if you guys want more.
Do you have to be careful doing it on a weekly basis as like a liaison to us? Is it more, because it's not really a public information, that email to us, or do you have to, is it better than doing a monthly report?
I mean, I think the easier for me doing a monthly report, I don't think there's no drawback either side. I mean, there's no action being taken on those. So, I mean, obviously don't respond
No, we
back.
can't use you as a conduit.
Yeah, don't respond back to me, respond to all, but if you have a comment to one of them that,
Unless you're Bruce.
you know.
He wasn't.
Notorious.
And just as an alternative, to not put more of a burden on Jeremy, what if we just simply said that we share this information at the workshops?
I think that would bog down the workshops.
Do you think so?
Yeah,
I'd rather just read it.
I mean,
I mean,
they're already long.
my ideas, the only thing that really holds any weight is once a month. I mean, I usually give you guys just a tidbit on what EAC kind of discussed. When they do start putting stuff together, it always goes through Jeremy, because it's not my job to put it together. And then he, like the fertilizer ordinance, and it kind of came on our backups and stuff, but other than that, unless there's something I hear at like a luncheon or something, it's gonna be once a month for me. It would be
Yeah,
nice.
so I think monthly is appropriate.
Unless there's something really pressing, and I could just like, hey Jeremy, like, oh my gosh, council needs to be having this on the
Yeah.
radar. You can just throw it
Well, I
on
was
the
just
TV.
saying monthly at the workshop instead of making him take on an additional writing burden, but whatever people want, it's fine.
You know, it's not against the law for you to write to one another.
I know,
Well,
it makes me nervous though.
And if you put at the bottom like we do on the EAC, please do not respond in order
I
to
know.
avoid.
But you guys are really good about following that though. I just,
I mean, if you're gonna write to him, you can save him the step, just
I
send it
know,
out.
for me personally, with Sunshine, it just makes me so,
No,
it's
even-
such a fine line. If you accidentally hit reply, and it's like, you're going down another path, so.
Send it to Jeremy, once a month's fine, we're just all in the loop. Alright, OE4, I think nothing to talk about here, we're gonna have our next workshop to review the charter in May. OE5, reduced millage rate, I think you guys all know this is mine, cause I've been very vocal about this for a while. I know it's a topic that isn't popular, but, and maybe it doesn't happen, but I think we owe it to our residents to make the effort. And if it turns out like there is just no way we can reduce the millage rate, fine, but at least like we really analyzed it, looked at it, and made the effort, because we owe that to our residents. That's all I'll say about that.
I mean, obviously, reducing taxes is always something that's looked upon favorably. I think with the development on, we've talked about this, the development on Jupiter Island, that may create some opportunities. But again, I'll go back to my earlier comment, which is because of the, what happened 8-9 years ago and coming out of the recession and all the things that transpired, we do have a lot of important projects that we need to undertake. So as much as I'd like to see taxes go down, I think it's important to undertake all the infrastructure projects and address all those issues. Once we've done that, and then again, as some of the redevelopment takes place and we have additional tax revenues come in, God, I'd love to be able to see us reduce the millage rate. But I don't want to reduce the millage rate at the expense of deferring and not addressing, legitimate infrastructure needs that the village has.
Yeah, which might be the case, but like I said, like,
No,
I think
I
we should be talking about
I
it, and
agree.
it should be actively talked about, and maybe Jeremy has some kind of initiative or plan for us to be able to track it. I don't know. I just,
I almost see it as a false sense of hope. I don't disagree that we should be talking about it, and I think we do, but I think if you look at the infrastructure, even our bridge, sidewalks, the roads, talking about Country Club, we didn't get the grant for it, $12 million. I think all that has to happen and at least show a record of that in that direction. So that's my only concern. I'm not opposed to it. Obviously, any of us would all want to do it, but we also know the realities of the situation that we're in.
Yeah, and I'm a family of 5. I mean, definitely don't wanna see them go up.
Yeah, definitely not.
But when we look at all of our things we have to we're still working on, and they're still on the goal list, like we haven't even hit so many of them. And they're not even the fun things, they're fixing roads and a lot of our infrastructure and store projects. I just don't think we're there yet. And then again, we had worked so hard in the past few years building up our reserves that were depleted greatly.
So I think, make no mistake, every budget process, we should be doing the most efficient or the best things for our residents possible. I mean, saving, every penny where we can. Ultimately it's gonna come down to, our priorities, roads, streets, we're underfunding those currently already. So whether you put it in a strategic plan, I think, this holds, staff accountable, but if you put it on a strategic plan, I'm gonna go do it. And so if I'm gonna have to cut budget to do a rollback rate, last year's rollback rate was $360,000. So if you want me to start the budget process, finding $360,000, we're not gonna be doing a lot of stuff. And so I'm just very concerned if we put it on this, you're holding me accountable to lowering the tax rate. And in my mind, that's the way this works. And so I think putting on the strategic plan, I don't know that that's the best place for it, but I think, in the budget process, we should be trying to do that if you guys find, hey, we just made a couple cuts, that's $200,000, let's lower the tax rate by that amount. Great, that's what we'll do, but we're underfunding a lot of stuff, and we still have things that we haven't even addressed yet, bridges, parks, things like that. So to put it in there, I don't know. I'll put it in there if that's what you guys want to do, but I don't know that it's the right place for it.
well, keep in mind, you don't have to do the whole rollback rate, right?
No, I get it.
So, and also taxes, property values keep going up, so we do keep getting more every year.
Which was what I was gonna say, I'm actually disappointed at that number that we got, which was about $500,000. I mean, you would think it'd be more,
What number?
but 500,000.
There's stepped, you're locked into it.
Well, you got
I
the
know.
homestead, so.
I know, so I'm saying when people go, oh, all these homes are selling at this and that, we're not sitting here collecting millions of dollars. So the number we were given recently was about $500,000. Like, I'm very disappointed, because you would think it'd be more. But when you look at that perception and everyone's thinking, oh, we should have millions and millions.
It's a year behind.
Don't.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think we're there yet. And then there is something that sits in my head. A former mayor, I wanna say about 2 or 3 years ago, stepped up and spoke to council, and they mentioned that they did this before. And they were trying to be kind to the residents. And unfortunately, a few years later, it was really hard to get what they needed to get done because they took so much away. So I do appreciate you saying you don't really necessarily wanna jump big, just even maybe small steps. But when they said that though, that really said to me, like, I'd hate to go too far backwards when we aren't done yet
For sure.
and then not be able to catch up, because Kyle was pointing out, we have no idea where this market's going or even the economy.
Maybe we can, instead of having a reduced millage rate as one of your organizational excellence goals, strategic initiative, it's more of a, what are our priorities as a council that we need to accomplish first before we feel like we have the
Okay.
ability to reduce the millage rate?
That's a good idea.
Just
So
have
what
a-
does that look like as an initiative?
So, I think that's, I don't know if that's an initiative, because that's something I think you can do fairly soon, but get the council to agree, all right, priority 1, emergency cash of 3 months. Priority 2, we have a roads plan for replacement every 20 years, and we show that we have a money available or planning for budget-wise. 3, sidewalks, bridge, buildings, just the list of operational items that are coming in the next 20 years to start really kind of get an idea of budget-wise, what % of our budget we needed to maintain for operation.
Don't we already have that with the strategic plan and the capital plans?
We're getting there. We don't have one for, really roads, we just know that we're putting 250,000 towards it, which is nothing.
No, but we do, I think, have some cost estimates as to what a lot of these things are gonna run us. We don't necessarily know where all the funding is gonna come from,
Well, that's
so.
the thing, and they're really long-term too. It's like,
Yeah.
if that rate, we're never reducing it.
Well, and
the tax.
and you're right, and the
Like-
truth is, we might not be reducing it, and I think that's the point, is that when you say prioritize, I think that's what, to me, that's what the strategic plan does. So I think what we're saying is, any consideration of any types of tax reductions would only take place once we've achieved the key initiatives that we've outlined in the strategic plan. Something to that effect.
Yeah, like highlight those specific, or like you said, something from a capital improvement plan. But like, I mean, that's kind of where, like I said, our projects are projected so far out. Like, that way we're never gonna reduce taxes. So like, that's why improving our grant writing skills and stuff like that is so important. Cause like, how are we gonna get these projects done otherwise?
Right. No, I agree with you on that. I mean, trying to find other sources to help supplement is very important.
Okay.
So do we want to leave it on there or take it off?
I would take it off, as you suggest, in the way it currently is written. And just maybe make a comment that, the village will continue to look at ways to minimize taxes subject to the completion of the key, priorities or objectives that we've outlined both in our strategic and our capital plan, something to that effect. Because I agree with Jeremy, if you put it in there now, it's kind of like, okay, Jeremy, this is what we're kind of expecting to
It's
see.
gonna be
from
something
you.
that's never gonna be checked off.
Right. It's not attainable this year.
I'll come back with something for the draft that matches what's been said, or give it a shot anyways.
Okay. Moving on to OE6.
So I threw this in there as a cost reduction idea. I know that our fire chief is in the drop, and this might be an opportunity to at least have the conversation. Is there value in having one public safety department?
Certified?
What?
You talking about like dual certified?
Not dual certified, not so much, just on the management side.
Oh, I see.
If someone wants to be dual certified, cool, but just from the structure of managing
Yeah,
a small
gotcha.
municipality, public safety, do we really need multiple people? Can we have like one individual that's in charge of public communications versus one from each house? Can we have, I don't know, is there overlap of the administration side of things in public safety that we could reduce or have better managed to help save costs in the overall area?
Do we have?
Without terminating anybody in this moment, I mean, it's just more through attrition, structuring it up to where, all right, this makes sense.
I think we want to explore to see if that's actually been a successful model anywhere, particularly in a town of our size, because, police and fire functions are very different. So you're still gonna have to have somebody, even if you had one individual,
I hear you.
somebody still has to oversee police, somebody still has to
A
oversee
lot of
fire.
CEOs go from one organ business to another business that are completely different, right? It's running an organization.
It is, but I would, and, well, you can maybe speak to this too, Aaron, but I see, I understand what you're getting at. But I would like to see if that's actually been successfully implemented well in other places, or places have tried it and then gone back. 'Cause I've heard of a couple places that tried it and went back, because it didn't work out so well. So I think we'd have to really do the research on this to see if the cost savings are great, but if it results in a dysfunctional structure, then the cost savings aren't gonna be worth it.
So if you're not talking about eliminating any roles, alright, so what would an example be? Do you have anything that like when you thought of this, what popped up? in your
I
mind?
would say you'd have
What particular role?
director of public safety, and then you have someone in charge of the fire side, someone in charge of the police side, not necessarily at a chief level, right? But someone, and then from there, kind of just keep going on.
Isn't that like what lieutenants are?
Could be lieutenant,
They're
I don't know
underneath
the
the chief?
structures or what you would call that, or assistant chief, or whatever you would call them, but someone that is still somewhat of a figurehead, but you can overlap the administrative side of things too.
Alright, so
Did Tesla used to float around?
you're talking about fire leaving eventually.
Yeah, when
Right.
when that happens, yeah.
So what would you do with the police chief in this hypothetical situation at that moment?
I think you look at the overall, again, figure out what that structure is, and whatever positions are not filled, obviously have the opportunity for Gus to be able to apply or whatever for whatever those potential positions. I mean, even the director or that first head in that police side.
And would that be the only role, combined role in this scenario? Or would there be other things that where you could save money as well?
I think wherever you can save
Like-
the opportunity, yeah. I don't know the overall structure.
Right.
I just think that it's something that we should at least look at in this opportunity.
Like a PIO for,
Exactly,
who does
for public
both.
safety, exactly.
right?
Yep. Scheduling or, whatever that is.
I would take this off the strategic plan, and if we wanna look at this as an exploratory opportunity, like I said, to see if it's actually functioned well, in different environments, that would be fine. I think it'd be premature to put it on the plan at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
Really workshop it first.
I'd like to workshop this. I think let's get rid of redundancies.
I think there's a lot of redundancies. I just have that feeling, I don't know it.
Yeah, and I don't either.
Right.
But, so going back to, reducing millage rate, you said we owe it to residents, right?
Mhm.
The other thing that we owe, in my opinion, to residents is with what we have to do the best we can and be as efficient as possible, so I think that's always reducing redundancies is a good thing, and you know what? Good on you, that never occurred to me. With fire police being in, it should have, they're in the same
We're
building,
in the same building.
Okay.
And I'm not looking at having a police officer be able to switch to be a firefighter one day,
Right.
unless that works out, great, cool. If that turns into an opportunity, awesome, but that's not the intent. So,
Yeah, that's interesting, I'd like to look into that more.
So I'll look at some options and then we can bring it back for a workshop.
But I agree with Frank, like I need a lot more
Yeah, sure.
examples, what positions you were thinking about, like other municipalities, we need a lot of backup to go with that.
yeah, I'm
Certainly
fine
worth
with
looking
taking it
at.
off, but I do think it's something worth talking about.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay, moving on to public infrastructure, PI,
I'm talking about it because of the opportunity with one of the chiefs getting ready to retire, not have to terminate anybody. Sorry.
so no problem, PI one, street maintenance program, so I don't think.
So I put a couple of the first ones on X 20-year road program, because that's what council has kind of tasked us with, is looking at that. So this year we'll try to look at the funding and see how we can do that. I know a comment came up from Mr. Stone about coming up with a true funding source for roads other than the surtax funds, because that may go away, in some form, and maybe it still allows for some roads, we don't know, there's a little uncertainty there. And then, I'll give it back to Kyle for the last one.
I know we talked about, when Bruce was on board, talking about roundabouts at those north and south entrances of Country Club. If that's something that we wanna continue to move forward, I thought it was a good idea and could be a benefit to everybody.
I thought somebody was looking into if that could fit.
I think it can.
But isn't there like
I
an
think someone told
engineer, or the goal was to get an engineer to look at what we were working with?
I think it was.
That's what the budget process will look like, and then we're gonna have to budget for an engineer to look at both of those intersections if that's what council wants to do.
I think the north entrance on Country Club Drive near Turtle Creek is the worst one, cause it's such a funky angle.
Yeah, that's what I would focus on.
Anything we can do to
north.
help the
So
flow of that.
Yeah, my guess, we are gonna do a couple things, like move the actual traffic, the bars up a little bit on two sides to hopefully that'll expand a little bit of visibility. I think, generic looking at it without an engineer, there's some right of way issues that maybe we can work with Turtle Creek to purchase some back in order to provide that, so. But like I said, it would take, an engineer, we'll get a quote, and budget process, we'll submit that as an option if that's what the council wants to do.
Do you have an issue with Martin County, because Turtle Creek is in Martin County, not Tequesta, or not in Palm Beach County?
Let me say problem. I mean, we've talked to them about this,
They're open to it.
They didn't slam the door on you?
They don't really have a part in it, they didn't say, oh, let us help you, they were just like, oh, that's interesting.
I just didn't know if they were gonna be opposed to it.
They might
or-
be willing to help us because of the bridge issues that they've got, they're gonna be closing down too. So, I think there's some opportunity there to work together.
If I might share this with y'all, one day at the EAC, maybe, it could be 6 months ago, I made a comment that I thought traffic signals were needed at the intersection of Old Dixie and Village Boulevard where you go to Publix, and also at County Line Road. I thought they were gonna chew my head off. I mean, they just blew up and said, no way, Jose, we want roundabouts. And so I'm just letting you know that they thought that, traffic lights were just silly and that roundabouts were the way to go at those locations.
Well, the traffic signal at Village was brought up when they did the repaving, and unfortunately, because that is I think a very dangerous intersection.
Oh, yeah, particularly at night.
And DOT shot it down.
I mean, we did a study on that, didn't we? It was a couple years ago.
Yeah, well, DOT did the study.
Yeah, not us, but
And
there was a study done.
they said that it wasn't sufficient to justify, although I think we tried to argue otherwise, but we
I think
lost.
we don't always agree.
So the only other one that goes up on this one is Doug is working on a bridge maintenance plan. I think that's probably appropriate in the streets part of it. We do have some maintenance that I think last year we tackled a $60,000 project over there. There are some additional bridge things that we haven't really taken very good care of that bridge over the last 10, 11 years, however long, maybe longer than that we've had it. So I think we'll add a comment to that somehow, with bridge maintenance in there.
So take out south entrance.
Huh?
Take out south entrance for this year.
Yeah, I would, cause it's
Start with the worst one.
a standard intersection, like that north one's
It's awful.
bad. I mean, I've had incidents, close incidents on foot, bike, and car there, so. Okay, moving on to PI 2, sidewalk improvement maintenance. This is my carryover from last year too, is consider new sidewalks. I know they would be less to be funded, but just like any of our improvement plans, I don't know why we wouldn't analyze it and plan it now, because again, say there's an opportunity to go for a grant, wouldn't it be great to have those sidewalks already planned and be part of the grant application? And same with pedestrian safety improvements, which that, the north intersection is one, and just any other areas. It's funny, the one on Tequesta Drive, just west of the bridge, I can't tell you how many times I see people not push the button for lights and are standing there waiting for a car. And there is a sign that says push the light, push the button.
Today.
But, there are some areas where it's a little dicey still, if you're walking or biking or skateboarding. So I think maybe just analyzing that a little bit better and any pedestrian safety improvements, which, like I said, what we did on Questa Drive was great, but
Here's your sign.
so many times you don't even see people pushing the button, so maybe that is not the
I think
solution.
I've only seen a handful, and there's a few that push it and start crossing, and maybe you're not paying attention, they're already crossing. So you do have to pay attention.
You do the best you can.
Yeah, I mean, these are grown people for the most part that we're talking about, right?
You can
Except
stand
for the
out there
ones
and
that
grab by the
skateboard.
hand and
If
walk
they
across.
can't figure it out.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
I said, here's your sign.
Personal responsibility a little bit.
Well, Kyle's office is right there. He can go out and direct, he can direct the foot traffic.
I have.
Okay, anything else on that one? PI 3, alternative transportation options. I think most of these are mine. I would just continue to encourage the EAC or us to think of additional options or solutions. I still think we need better connectivity from a biking standpoint and even from, on foot too. I run a lot and there's areas I have to sometimes map, depending on how long I'm gonna run, I have to map out my plan. I'm like, okay, well, I can't go there because there's no sidewalk there. So I think, just connectivity, which I think is gonna be part of the Treasure Coast regional planning process. But we need to look at it as a village as a whole, and I think you guys have looked at that a little bit too, am I right?
I think a little bit, yes.
I think it's important, especially if we're continue to go down this road, which feels like it's just really making even more of a tight-knit village community. I personally think it's important.
So yeah, which part?
What do you
You
mean?
talking about connecting more biking?
Just having better connectivity
Okay.
with bike and even foot.
What would be worthwhile is when they did the US 1 project, they did in fact look at connectivity throughout the entire village under the, what was it called, Tom, the One Street concept or whatever it was. So we might want to ask them to bring that forward again as part of the discussion. Well, Nilsa Scott, might be worth bringing it forward as part of the discussion during the charrette process or post, either way.
So I have a couple things. The need for additional options for connectivity, or seeking alternative transportation. What are we trying to solve? What is the problem?
The comp plan says that this village will seek ways and means, I'm paraphrasing, ways and means to reduce vehicular trips per day, to minimize air pollution, etc. That's one thing that I'm aware of.
So that's broad. So yeah, I'm not opposed to that, but I don't know that we need to be creating our own bus system with whatever vehicles that might be. I'm all in favor of the connectivity with the biking standpoint and walking standpoint. Even the e-bikes, which I kind of would like to bring back to the subject of allowing e-bikes on sidewalks. If anybody's open to that, I'm game.
I'm open to that.
Because I keep running into bikes on the streets and having to swerve around them, another car coming closer to me, when there's a sidewalk with nobody on it and they're going normal speed. So I would like to bring that back up. If you're good with that, everyone's good with
I
that.
think to me, the additional options are ways, which is what Molly was saying, it's ways to get people out of the cars, walking and biking. I don't think within the village, quite honestly, we're not gonna have a bus system, we're not gonna have a trolley system, we're not gonna have any of those things. So it's a matter of what are the alternatives, and I think those are the two alternatives.
I do think too, right, we have a new business relations person, and I mean, and this is private, so we don't have much control over it, but can we work with someone and see if they wanna come here, like the Zeke's golf cart, right? We have so many cool places popping up in Dequo's, like Casacana's open now, like, why couldn't we have something like that to buzz around so people aren't driving? But like I said, it's private, so it's like we're not
Yeah,
paying for that,
so-
but I don't know,
But
just
the other question is why are we trying to keep people from driving to Casa Canas to have dinner?
So just to,
What is the
the
reason?
EAC chair is here, and they did look at some of those golf cart options, and they were very heavily expensive. So they would
Right.
require the village to pay at least half. And then they
I
talked
remember that,
about they
yeah.
could do brand sponsors, and then you talk about, is that an aesthetic that the village wanna go down? It really came down to cost though, because they were very cost heavy for a small
If
village.
there's profit in it, someone's gonna do it.
And Zeke's works down on the beach because there's no parking, there's so many people, and so there's a need for that, but again, so why do we wanna keep cars off the road? What is that?
Don't they cross US one and go to Harborside too? Like, I'm pretty sure they do.
They do.
Like,
Every now and
yeah,
then,
so
but
they're
they-
not, I mean,
people
there's
don't go to Harborside.
parking there, so.
Yeah, that's against the law unless it's a registered vehicle.
Which I know, I believe most residents are pushing each other to street legal their carts, so they can at least go to Casacana, get over that little bridge.
That's something that I hate the idea of.
The street
Because-
legals.
Yeah, cause street legal, to have a street legal LSV, low speed vehicle, they have to only go a certain speed. I think it might be 23 miles an hour or something like
I
that.
think it's 25.
I think so.
So you
He's
wanna
right,
be behind
he's
that
right.
thing, and
It's a
Just-
state thing though, right?
it doesn't go over the bridge at 25, it goes over the bridge at 20 because it loses juice, it's not a car. So you wanna be behind a line of 20-mile-per-hour golf carts, you know,
We're not,
mine goes 37, so you don't have to worry about my golf cart.
well, and that kind of leads in the next one's improve golf cart safety.
Yeah.
I don't, I would never be in favor of getting rid of golf carts or anything, but
No,
I do think we should enforce the ordinances a little more because stuff I see and I've heard, other, residents see stuff, and I think there's just a lot of not safe stuff going on with the golf carts, and I think if, we can make an effort to enforce it a little bit, that might help, but then going into, if they are registered and can legally drive down the street, does that cause a safety issue though? Because you have cars going slow and then there's gonna be cars frustrated behind, like, we're not built, like, we don't have golf cart lanes, right? We're not built for that, but mostly the golf cart safety, I was more just make sure
And
we're
that's
enforcing
happening
the
right now.
ordinance.
as I'm
Yeah, it's
sure you've
definitely
seen,
happening.
yeah, that's happening right now.
Yeah, so I think we need to be better at, and I don't have the answer yet, because we keep trying different things until we find what works, and we found a couple of things over the weekend that worked. But being better about communicating, we can't tell people how to parent, but we do need to hold somebody responsible for like the 7 and 8-year-olds driving around crazy with packed golf carts. So we have to find that fine line of.
Well, no, you're not telling them how to parent, you're telling them what the law
That's a
is.
rebuttal that comes up a lot. Is I'm okay with my child driving it.
What's that?
So the enforcement.
I'm
needs-
okay with
I
my
know.
son driving my
But I'm saying
car, he's 12,
enforcement,
but it's not
like
legal.
Mayor is saying, the enforcement needs to kind of get better.
Well,
whether or
the
not-
police certainly have a responsibility to not lecture people, and not be confrontational or patronizing, but laws are laws and regulations are regulations, I don't know.
Right.
What
I like
else
that
we
digital
do?
sign that's out.
So
I
yeah,
heard
you
a lot
have
over
an
the
age,
weekend.
there's an age limit, you have to be a licensed driver, and also, one of the things that I would hear a lot from parents is that the whole parenting thing is when they're driving around holding their newborn, you have to have a car seat in there. It's a moving vehicle, that's the law. You're not allowed to hold your baby in your arms, just like you're not allowed to do that while you're driving your car.
It's legal when you're on the street.
So that's the other thing, it's like, it is a moving
Yeah,
vehicle,
It's a
it's just like
low-speed
a boat is, it's moving.
Yeah.
But that digital sign, I heard people say over the weekend, when did that get put in place?
yeah.
They had no idea.
Right.
They were supportive of it, but they said, oh, when did that start? So I think we do need to be better, I do agree with you. There was something I wanted to bring up, but it ties in with connectivity and the sidewalk. And I think most people have walked in El Portal. The residents in that bulk area have been constantly hounding Doug about putting a sidewalk, extending the current sidewalk into the entrance around the curve of El Portal for safety of all ages
Yeah, that's a scary
around that bend, because the roads are tiny, and the fact that it would connect an easier entrance for bikers, pedestrians, baby strollers, older couples that are trying to walk around that bend to get
Oh,
to
yeah,
so that it would end, I think Doug said, as of right now, he would just have it end right where it meets Golfview, but the connectivity of connecting that weird
You
short
come on
stop
both
box.
sides of
we
the street.
do, there is a plan with that sidewalk, and then I think one other new sidewalk, I can't remember exactly where in the village, but there is one plan that has 2 new sidewalks, and that's one of them.
Yeah, but
But I think there's areas that need more than just those 2, which is why I wanted to put
Oh,
it
for
on
sure.
there.
Come on the south side of El Portal.
On the
run
south
that
side for
all the
right
way
now,
around. Yeah.
and it's getting heavily pushed at Doug because of safety, as well as connecting a better flow from that entrance. Especially for and then you got kids walking to the bus stop, and that's become
Riding
a prime area
bikes.
right there. We're not talking the whole neighborhood, we're talking a prime area that's become a problem.
So the two new sidewalks that I think that is being referenced is the east side of Tequesta, or the north side of Tequesta Drive is a future sidewalk.
Yeah.
And a project that we're working on, we're gonna bring you, we've had kind of pivot a little bit since we didn't get the big country club grant that, you know, was highly anticipated. Is that in order to get through our next sidewalk program, we need to do a drainage project through here, through El Portal. Otherwise, we're just gonna be putting down a road and tearing it up when we do get this. It is about a $300,000 drainage project through here. You know, our stormwater fund does not cover that. With that, just to tie it in, is putting in a sidewalk with drainage, and that will wrap around for safety on El Portal. So it connects here, and it'll continue to run. And then I think there's a big tree here that it'll eventually stop just short of that, because we start getting that tree, it'll, you know, different issues. But that's one of the projects that we're going to be bringing to you, kind of pivoting with the ARPA funds a little bit, and ultimately you guys will have the say on that. But that's an important project for the future. Not only is there, you know, health safety issues right now with drainage, but also to continue with our street program, we're going to need to do a drainage project in there. So there is a sidewalk that's going to be part of that ask when we bring it to you guys.
May I ask you all a question about bicycles and connectivity? When you think of improving the connectivity, do you prefer it to be on the asphalted portion of the road, or do you prefer it to be totally off the road? Meaning, perhaps a wider pathway or a sidewalk instead of being on the street? I mean, what's your preference is what I'm asking.
So basically adding a bike lane to the street or
Yeah, you can do either one, right?
In a dream world, I would love to have two different types of pathways off the road, but we are not structured like that. Even when we looked at just widening our current sidewalks, they can't be done without removing a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
So it becomes a whole, like, even just the cost raised up. I mean, but in a dream world, yeah, it'd be great if we could have the pedestrians safe and then anyone on a bike safe, but we aren't structured like that. I actually get more nervous putting bikers on roads.
Yeah, and especially with the kids too, like that makes me nervous to have, you know, the kids in the bike lane on the road. And I mean, because I know we put the bike lanes on US 1, I would never let my kid knowingly.
I mean, not to bring it up, I mean, we just it wasn't in our village, but there was a person who was not being responsible, driving their motor vehicle and jumped the sidewalk and hit people. I mean, so having people on the road, I usually don't favor that.
You wouldn't ride your bike on those nice big green bike paths?
I would not
US
let my
1?
child. I would.
Insane.
Ooh, you're very brave.
So your preference is off the road?
I usually do not prefer anything on the road.
So
Yeah, okay.
Like I said, in a dream world,
I think we figured out what do we need, I think, in order to technically to take it off the road safely, we need like an 8-foot wide sidewalk, I thought that's what it was. Yeah, and you're right, we don't.
ours is
the
5.
right of ways, the trees, I mean, we were pushing it to get it from whatever it was, 3.5 to, 5 or 6.
Once we get to everyone at 5 feet, the
Yeah.
feds are gonna change it to 6, so just now.
Then it means it's the case, we can't accommodate sidewalks, then we need to put bike lanes in the street, and
but
this
even
will
our
make people
roadways,
cringe, but like, do you lower the speed limit? Like, there's just so many options to look at, and I think, and this is, I know I said this when I first joined council, it's like, we need to have that overall vision of what it's gonna look like, and, cause I think you can't just hodgepodge it in different areas, like, you have to look at it as a whole, like,
Well,
what
that's
works best here.
That's why I think bringing back that Treasure Coast planning piece that they did a few years ago, because they did have, I think they were adding bike lanes to almost all of our surface roads in that plan. That was at least.
I don't understand how you would
the
widen our
suggestion.
roads, they're so small.
It was just the idea or concept that we're pulling it back up for us to take another look at it, I think.
That was done when we did,
When they redid US 1.
Okay, so PI3, I think it sounds like let's take off additional options for alternative transportation and maybe EAC you could still consider, and if they come up with something else, they can present it, but maybe take it off Jeremy's list. And the connectivity from a biking, just put like and walking standpoints, we're looking at both.
So just full disclosure, I mean, it is part of our comp plan, so we will always keep our eye out on additional options. I don't think we're throwing it away. I mean, so
For sure,
it just
yeah.
as a strategic and short term.
Yeah, keep it off of here, okay. PI4, I think that's,
It's me.
no, I skipped, well, PI4, no one had
Oh, no,
comments,
sorry.
and that one, I mean, I think it is just continue to search for funding opportunities, that's a huge price tag.
Is there any value in bringing that to referendum?
Well, you're talking about the undergrounding of utilities, or you're talking about the?
Having someone give us an estimate what that would cost, and 26 million, and does the residents wanna pay for that?
You know the answer.
I don't know, I've heard a lot of people say they want it.
I'd be curious, does that have to be a percentage say yes, or does that have to be 100% say
They
yes?
want it, I don't know if they wanna pay for it.
51%.
Well, how many households did you say we had, Jeremy?
There's
About,
Well, some neighborhoods already have it,
30,
so would they have to pay?
2,600.
2,600?
I already have
So
it.
we're
Like I
talking
said,
about
Depends on how you set
10
it
grand,
up.
10 grand per household.
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, you can have assessments through areas, certain, all of country club, one, we wanna tackle this, them, and we can put it out, do an assessment for just country club, if, we wanted to.
I
mean, so
wouldn't
you-
foresee a neighborhood that already has it wanting to pay for another neighborhood to have it. Not that it would make the price better for the neighborhood that wants it, but
For those of you who live in the country club, one of the things I think would be important, if you look at your tax bills in the country club, most of you are paying about $700 a year in an assessment for the sewer system done almost 20 years ago. The timing would be when that goes away, boom, now you can add and they wouldn't even feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wanna add that without the citizens.
that wonderful sewer project that messed up the roads.
When does that go away?
It wasn't us, by the way, it was forced by the courts through lots of heads.
That should be going away pretty soon, actually, cause I think that was done
I
in
think-
the late 90s.
Gotta be
We just leave it
2000s.
where it is, and you'll continue to search for
2001.
opportunities, that's
Yeah.
one of the possibilities.
I
Well, I
have,
was
the
just
neighborhood
gonna-
money went through.
I was gonna take it off, but continue to, some pokes up with a grand opportunity or something, we would look at it, but it isn't something that will, stay. Interesting point, when they did that assessment back then, supposedly they also did a survey on sidewalks, and if they wanted to include sidewalks in the country club as part of that assessment, failed miserably, so just. And so now we have this conversation about the village putting in sidewalks for them. Well, they didn't want it, and they didn't want to pay it, but they want the village to. So, I mean, I don't know where you guys sit with that, but just a fun fact that our historians provided to me.
I don't have time to do it now, but I can give you a detailed cost estimate for the entire village or the country club, whatever you want, because that's my bailiwick, but
You can't bring that up right now?
no, I'm so busy right now. I could give you a thumbnail sketch to tell you whether it's 35 million or 26 million or what, but
Well, they did give us an estimate of 26.
I would keep it on the radar, cause there is a rumor that always starts up every now and then that it's coming. I always have to help squash it, cause it's not coming, I don't know where the rumor comes from.
FPL has a long-term plan to, maybe know this better than I do, long-term plan to get rid of the main transmission lines and underground those, but not the service lines to houses or throughout the village, so that won't be something that FPL does, that'll have to be something that we tackle.
Okay, so agree, take it off of the strategic initiative, but Jeremy's always gonna be looking for opportunities. Then PI 5, I don't know whose comment that is.
That's mine. I just kind of, I don't feel like we have a good handle of how to fund the replacement of those infrastructures on an annual basis to maintain it. I know we got a plan, but the actual funding aspect of it, I don't think we've got a good percent of our budget going towards that.
Are you talking about building public safety in here, or are you talking about parks, you talking about Station 11, you're talking about all of our buildings?
All of the
Any physical
Capital.
structure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that we lack obviously our parks is coming, you know, we'll have a better idea, we can put together a capital improvement plan, you know, Station 11, that's is that a priority for us? And it never has been. So there's a lot to be desired still with some capital items.
I don't know if this is the place to talk about it or not, but, you know, even looking into the opportunity of our current facilities, the Public Works Department moving it over to the water plant and utilizing that land for park space or something as a pocket park or something, since we just lost Paradise Park, something to utilize, sell it, whatever, I don't know. But trying to consolidate spaces as a time too, something to look into. If that's possible. I think there's land and
So there's two parts to that, obviously, would be, you know, what the cost is to move our team over there, and then, you know, what that would look like as a park over there.
I know there's an antenna, I know there's stuff there. But to me, I think it, you know, trying to consolidate and creating more green space or whatever. Efficiencies, whatever.
There's businesses over there.
There is. Yeah. Start to think, brainstorm.
Maybe they can be up all night now.
Is it?
Well, I think there'll be, I mean, that's a topic of discussion, I think, when we do the parks plan too, is like finding opportunities to be able to purchase
Fun
or,
in the future, right?
It's one of the comments when we get to that.
right, okay. All right, moving on, economic development. ED1, annexation, I don't know that there's much to talk about except continue to work with state, county, or our new water. Anything else to talk about there?
I still like the idea of water, using it as an opportunity. Someone sells their house.
Well, I wanna be clear, cause we've talked about this more, cause I'm like, well, what happens if one house in Bermuda Terrace, for example, upsizes, like, they don't annex in right away, doesn't it have to be, okay. So
So what Kyle, I think, is advocating for is taking a more stringent approach to the ordinance that we're reviewing now. Right now, it's just upsizing or, a new service if we were connecting. What Kyle's talking about is the more aggressive approach that council at the time just didn't necessarily want to consider, didn't turn it down. But if you sell your house and a new owner comes in, that person is going to be part of this annexation, voluntarily annexation.
If they're contiguous with, yeah.
Right, so over time, if it's not contiguous over time, it will be, if enough people sell their house over time, maybe 20 years, but at some point, I think that's what Kyle's talking about is and correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, but
No, you're right.
we had a brief conversation about it, but. And so we can bring that back for a workshop to have a future conversation about that, as part of the annexation if council desires, or we're good with where we're at.
I mean, I can tell you that the meeting I just went to this afternoon, they were all talking about annexation and wanting to be part of the vote of the Cuesta, but realizing it's such a hard ask all along the northern part of Jupiter Island. So they weren't opposed to it because they're tired of the police officers from the county not policing that area.
Excellent.
So
That's big bucks.
The problem is getting a majority of those people to actually come out
Yeah.
and agree to that.
I understand.
Yeah, particularly because so many of them are seasonal residents and they haven't chosen to make this their permanent place of residence, so they're not homesteaded. I think they're starting to, but then if they're not homesteaded, then those taxes go up obviously more than the 3% if you have an environment like we have right now.
Okay, all right, moving on, ED2, mitigate COVID, I think, US 1 bridge impacts, so the two items on there, those are just carryover of things we've talked about in the business forum meetings. I don't know if anyone else has any more input here.
I think we probably take COVID-19 off there right
Yeah.
at this point. I mean,
I was gonna say that.
that's kind of past history now, hopefully.
I would agree.
Okay, moving on.
So I guess really we're gonna keep that on, just the US Bridge mitigating that impact. I mean, I know, we've tried to partner with Hope Sound before and Jupiter. I think the mayor and I talked about, trying that approach again, maybe trying to ramp it up a little bit, especially since we have a staff member that can take on a little bit of that responsibility that maybe they didn't want to. So we're gonna try to circle back to that. I don't know how far we'll get, and then create more creative events that are non-retail, which I guess is food and beverage. I know in the past we've tried to do like a taste of Tequesta or whatever, so we'll try to do something that's more food and beverage related.
I was suggesting, I feel like a lot of ours are like retail and food and beverage. I was suggesting, like, there's so many businesses that aren't retail and food and beverage, and a lot of our events don't really include them.
Gotcha.
So, and like I said, I think we should be doing that in general, but especially during the bridge closure.
Speaking of the mitigation, has the issue of the traffic lights and access to the hospital, has that been?
Still in progress. The county hasn't picked a vendor yet, so we're waiting for the county to pick a vendor before we don't wanna pick a vendor that
Is incompatible?
Incompatible.
Yeah, okay.
That's gonna be so important, cause he would just sit on Indian Town the other day,
I
was
know.
the only one to jump the curb and get out of the way. It's so frightening to watch them just sit there blaring their sirens and nobody moves.
I mean, what our plan is, we're gonna budget for that, for those items in the case that we don't get FDOT to contribute, but we're gonna budget, I think it was like $50,000 or $55,000 for all the intersections and all of our trucks and vehicles. And so we're gonna put together a $55,000 item for you guys to look at, and then we'll move forward, one way or another.
Yeah, I know this is off topic for the moment, but the work that's being done at alternate A1A and Old Dixie, what's the expected completion date on that, revamping of that intersection? I know they started it,
We
but
started, I had to look, I don't know what on that particular, they're all just kind of grouped in as intersection improvements for 12 months, and so they didn't really give us specifics.
yeah, I knew they had started, but it looked
A
like
year from now.
looked like they were kind of slow walking that one too, so.
Yeah, it does seem it's like a bit delayed from the last update we got, cause they do a little more refined update, like monthly, is it monthly?
We get a
I feel like
but it's
things
not,
that they said last month did not happen.
but it's not specific either, so it's like, we have 12 months to do these intersection improvements, so if they don't start the first month, in theory, they're still gonna get them done by even 1/12, so,
They give themselves a lot of wiggle room, in other words.
yes.
They're still on track for March next year.
With the US Bridge, my biggest issue, I'll just say, I don't think, and I think you and I have spoke about this, I don't think the restaurants, like non-retail, non-food businesses, I don't know, I have no idea what's happening, but I think like restaurants, stuff like that, are gonna be very busy, because you're not gonna wanna leave Tequesta. So, these restaurants that people aren't driving up from Palm Beach Gardens to go to most Tequesta restaurants anyway. They're gonna be busier than normal, in my opinion, because people are not going to want to drive down to Palm Beach Gardens or Jupiter. But, so having said that, my biggest issue is gonna be sitting in traffic, which is gonna be everyone's issue. Speaking of lights for emergency services, what about lights for my services? Like when I'm sitting at Old Dixie in Tequesta or US 1 in Tequesta, and sometimes both arrows turn green and there's no one sitting in a turn signal, or sometimes one turns green when both people are sitting in turn lanes, like they're really jacked up. The lights,
Which
the lights.
intersection are we talking about? You talking any of them? Or you-
No, not all of them. US 1 in Tequesta and Old Dixie in
And that's a
Tequesta.
common one, I've texted
Awful.
Jeremy many times,
Awful.
I've been sitting at this light for 17 minutes.
Yeah, they're horrible. Like
Well,
they're
anytime
just
we
not
get a
working.
complaint, we send them to FDOT and they come out and do a change and it works for a while, and
That's it, Ryan. That's all it is. Just, hey, come and check this, and they go, yeah, it was messed up, and we fixed it, and then call us next time. Like,
pretty much.
well, how often will they come out? What do they charge us, or anything? Nothing.
They don't charge anything.
So then, can we call them weekly, or are they going to come out? Like, if that happens, seriously, like,
We can try, I mean.
Well, when you
look
say
at-
we, who's we? Like, do we call,
When I say
who do
we,
I
like,
call?
when I say we, Doug calls them.
so is that something I can put in like on our website? Like where you can request services from
Like
the
way too many
village?
issues.
Yeah. Or do I call, utility? Like who do I talk to
What
about
do you,
that?
wanna call
what do you
police.
think is the, I mean, what do you looking for? A number that you could call to make sure that somebody from the village is gonna address that issue? Is that what you're looking for? And I mean, we can do whatever.
Yeah,
Like I'm in a blessed position. I know when I'm sitting at a light and I'm witnessing people pull out lanes to go make a U-turn and it becomes chaotic. I have a blessed that I call you and then you take care of it.
Right.
But I mean, an average person doesn't know to call you or Doug.
Well, how will they
Who
know
would
if
they
they're
call?
sitting at the intersection? How will they know? Do you
When you're
think
sitting there for 13, 17 minutes, you know something's
they're gonna
wrong.
get their phone out and look, you think?
Usually you
And I'm
can
just
tell.
asking.
I mean, you sit there
No.
for 3 minutes and it
No,
feels
you're
long.
right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I would have no idea who to talk to get that done. Like, the average citizen is probably thinking they're gonna call Tallahassee or something, you know?
Or
Like-
hoping that someone locally is gonna recognize
Right.
them and do something. That-
So, but VEFDOT told us for the bridge traffic, to keep it flowing, they're supposedly having people watch the cameras. And
That won't be too question
That's
around
on
US
certain
one.
intersections.
That's why I was
Yeah.
asking him
Okay.
specifically
Right.
what light he
Okay.
was talking about. That light's a whole different, ballgame than that project.
not watching
I
that.
mean, I'm open to whatever we think is the solution. Right now, we get people to text me and then I call Doug and say we have a problem. I mean, that's how we get it. I mean, I know the clerk's office get calls and say, I've been sitting here forever. And then we report it to the FDOT. So something works. I mean, whether it's the best process or not, I mean,
Put a big sign on the yard.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I
Call
don't think we
So
want
I
to.
think I wanna kinda get, but I really value your topic and I think we should talk about it, but it's getting late. I do wanna get back to
Let me
the
toss
strategic
that around and
initiative.
see if we can't figure something
Thank you.
out. I don't know what the answer is, but we'll find something.
Thank you. And then just one more thing on the US one bridge closure. I just do wanna say, I don't wanna underestimate how many people do come from outside of DeQuesta. I have friends, and not even friends, just colleagues that I know regularly come from Wellington, West Palm, Jupiter Farms to eat at restaurants here. And then during the sidewalk sale, I was out and there was a group of women from Palm Beach Gardens and they're like, what? There's a sale? Everything's on, like they didn't even know. And so we've talked about like, how do we advertise outside of DeQuesta? Because I just don't want to underestimate how much traffic we get here that's not people from the village. I think we need to keep that in mind.
I went to a restaurant the other day and I don't think there was anybody from Coast to West.
Yeah, so it's important to have on our radar. All right, moving on to safe, livable, and family friendly, SLF1. And that was mine. I think they're probably in process. I think we just need to finalize and have a formal business plan for the rec center. It's been piecemealed to us in meetings, so I think we need a final plan.
Are you suggesting that would you let them open first and kind of, we talked about data, gathering data on utilization and all that. Would you be looking for something preliminarily that would then be updated based on the actual experience? Or are you looking for something that would come after we've opened and they've had a chance to bring some data in and then put
I
something
think
forward?
we need a finalized formal plan, and like any company does, you always analyze and update it. So get the plan done.
So you want us to contract with somebody to do a business plan for us?
Nope. I thought we were capable of doing so. Is that not true?
I don't know what you want it to look like. So we have a needs assessment and we put together a budget. I mean, and our projections is that, you want us to package that together? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, everything's
Or-
been piecemealed to us in meetings.
Okay.
Even like the policies and all. I mean, everything's okay. And we're gonna change this, but we haven't seen it back to us change. Like everything has kind of been all over the place in meetings. I think it all needs to be in one place. This is our final plan. These are the policies and procedures. Like, just needs to be in one place and formalized.
You want everything assembled together in one,
Yeah,
okay.
and we've asked for changes too to it, so we haven't even seen that. I think it's important to have that done before.
What changes are we talking about?
We like the policies and procedures. We talked about changes when it was presented to us.
And we finalized the membership rates and all those things. So I think what she's saying is let's take all the pieces and put them together in just one formal document, so it's all there in one place.
Jeremy, we did a
Unless anyone else
business
thinks we need
plan
more than
for
that.
all
No,
of
but I
the
understand what you're saying, like, we just voted on the
But
membership fees and stuff,
You
and
did
it was,
format.
I get what you're saying, it's just,
Yeah.
we aren't consistently given a whole package, we're given the pieces that we're looking at the moment.
Yeah.
But the term's not business plan, right? I mean, we don't
Maybe
have a
that's
business
wrong
plan for the
term.
water
It could be
department.
an operating plan. it could be-
Operating, yeah, like operating plan, I may have used wrong terminology.
No, I'm just trying to,
But I think you guys get what I'm saying.
Let's put it all
Yeah.
together and have one last look at it.
I still have two long-term strategy for parks and green spaces, which we're obviously doing with the parks and master park plan, which is going to be presented to us in May. But with that, some of these remind, I think we need to make sure when that plan's presented, we prioritize elements of the plan. And then I know we talk about the Cypress land we own, landscaping that. And
Can we
then,
talk about that one just for a second, cause
Cypress?
yeah, so this is what we're talking about, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
So we're talking about landscape, to do more with that, like
The street.
beautify it, is that what we're?
that's another topic, but I'm talking about what
Oh, yeah,
Jeremy
'cause
just
it's
had
a
up.
welcoming area.
So you guys wanna do landscaping there or the whole strip? Because the whole strip, I mean, I had this ready, but I had to put it over.
so my intent was to hear what the charrette was
Came out
going
with
to
charrette.
recommend. And it's, I think my understanding that we'll see what they're gonna recommend, but I think they might recommend, getting rid of it.
By the tracks. you're talking-
Yeah.
and I would be okay selling that if that's the case, if they have no use for it.
See, so I guess when I look at this, this piece, and I know this really stemmed from Jupiter doing a piece, but theirs a little different because they're down on this side where they're a little closer to Old Dixie as it winds around. We have a plant, that's there that you really can't see this portion too well. I drove it a couple times. You really can't see this portion unless you're in between these two sections. So the only part that, in my opinion, unless I'm wrong, is the only part that we're talking about is this. And we wanna do a little bit better landscaping there. Cause I don't think we need to get way down there where the plan's blocking that. I mean, spend, $20,000 or $30,000 a landscaping area that nobody really sees. So, when I hear landscaping the Cypress Drive piece, it's this.
Jeremy, are those trees that are there currently, are they in the railroad right away or is that?
No, they're ours. That's ours.
And that hedge too, I think.
Yeah, the hedge is ours as well.
Yeah, I would, we had this conversation once before and we didn't move it forward, but I would still be in favor. If we could get a favorable price on that land, I agree with Kyle, I would sell it. I'd maybe talk to the railroad about or talk to the people who bought it about landscaping that boundary by the tracks and then taking those funds and putting them to use in the other parks that people are actually going to be physically using. I don't see anybody playing, we're not gonna have kids and people playing in that space.
It's not for a park, it's
tracks.
for open green space. And again, it beautifies the village. We talk about, beautifying our gateways and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's part of that. And then isn't this land is this in our,
It's in Nielsen's,
so I'm like,
Chart.
it's not?
no, she tells everyone it's in the chart, she has it marked as green too.
But again, I
We had this
think,
conversation, unless council just wants to designate, I don't think it's a good designation. You're gonna basically kind of invite people over to stand next to railroad tracks, and it goes against our, railroad safety thing. And if it's beautification, that's different than an open space and green space like a park space. So, I mean,
For me, it's not about making it a usable park, that makes
Open
absolutely no
space and
sense
green
as the
space,
railroad,
yeah.
but that's an entrance
Well,
into
that's,
our.
yeah, that's what I'm asking, I mean,
Yeah,
if we're just
so
talking about that,
After
or-
the charrette, I would wait till after the charrette for my full opinion,
Well, I think.
but
that-
I would personally start with from the edge and work your way in.
Well, okay, so like that northern
Like
section.
it looks too industrial right now.
Okay, that area, the northern section that is highly visible from the road, I agree, you'd wanna landscape that. But as you go down the track, again, I just think there's an opportunity to take and receive, valuable dollars for that land and reinvest it, whether it's Remembrance Park, whether it's, Tequesta Park, wherever you wanna put it. I think there could be great value in using those dollars in the other park areas that we're talking about further developing.
I still disagree, cause the numbers we got last time when the guy used to be interested in buying it, they weren't that large enough for me to make that swap.
Well, I don't know, it depended, I mean, we didn't really know what the numbers were gonna be, because we never really got quite that far, I don't recall in the conversation.
I think we all agree we should wait till after the end of the charrette.
But I don't disagree with that.
I just see a broken sidewalk that needs to be replaced.
I think that's an old picture, it's already been fixed, so.
And then, the next, like, again, implementing funding for future planning of parks and open space, is that a referendum kind of deal? But I think, again, let's talk about that with parks. But I just wanna make sure it's on here in case it's not part of the parks plan that's presented to us. And then, capital improvement plan for parks.
You can buy a nice little park right here for about $1 million.
Like the trees? Yeah. Wait,
Well, and-
that's the one that just sold.
I don't know if they might have.
Not
but
the one on the water, but the other one just
It's
sold.
been selling multiple times, it's like the third owner now.
Alright.
They're gonna realize they can't develop it.
I
They're
saw
gonna
that
try to
post and I
Sell it
went,
again.
oh, here it comes.
Well, and keep in mind, like, if you have a plan for funding, like, remember the house next to Remembrance Park
Yep.
went for sale? Like, how awesome would that have been to buy that and expand? And then, would an offer come for potentially a house next to Constitution Park and, like, awesome, wouldn't it have been nice to be in a position to buy that, but we're not, so. Like I said, I don't know if that's gonna be in the parks
Continue
plan, so I
mapping.
wanna make sure it's on our radar. And then the CIP for parks,
Just constant, it's just me, it's make sure we have a way to maintain what we have. Just it's a concern I've always had.
And I know, talking with Greg, our playgrounds are like 20 years old. I mean, we need to start really thinking about our playgrounds over there at Constitution.
And those playgrounds are expensive.
oh yeah.
Yeah, he gave me like $750,000 to replace them all, and I said, well, we're gonna have to break that into some sections, so.
I can know Good Shepherd, their little park behind our, it's like 100,000.
Put the word kid on anything. Come on, you have kids.
I know, that's why I
Baby
don't have
shower,
playgrounds.
kids.
Well, one thing you talked about seeking funding, I mean, one of the, we have the Friends of Public Safety, the chief has started something for police. We could look to see if we could have a Friends of Park and Recreation and see if we could generate funding, through the community. There may be businesses or individuals who are in a position to donate money for some of these improvements.
We'll have a couple options for you. That one's obviously gonna stay on our strategic plan. We'll have a couple options and then we can have a future discussion about funding for parks, and that'll be one of the options that we put forth. We also gonna have there's also some parkland dedication ordinances that we can look at. There's a couple different tools that we can use, and then obviously there's always a referendum or bond if we want to do what Jupiter did. So we'll explore those options.
So the one thing I wanted to bring up for that, SLF2, was kind of what you just were bringing up. If we had some sort of side fund, even if it was just a little bit every year that we put into it. So even in the future, if we're looking at a pocket something or an extension of a property we already own, a lot of times the grants that we try to go after, such as Paradise Park was an example, we don't even have the matching. So even if we were to start looking at grants to start enhancing everything about the village, the safe, livable, and family friendly, we could start building the matching fund. And then we could start, if we got to an achievable goal with that fund, we could always look at which property do we go at first. Do we go at the one that's like $1 million, or do we go at the one that's kind of being thrown out at 600? That decision will come later. But we constantly come up to this wall, we never have even a matching. And we get these great grants, like, oh, let's shoot for it. Well, where are we gonna get $500,000 to put?
Yeah. We have
matching.
no funding plan at all for,
So it'll probably be a long-term goal, it's not like it'd be in a year or two, but if we consider putting a small amount to some degree each year.
yeah.
Parks is one area, I think, where you make a very legitimate argument for a referendum.
And I think if we could show people that we could achieve something in the future, maybe they won't be so hesitant to get rid of weird slivers of land that we
We
own.
can still get rid of the weird sliver, but that's a different
I know.
conversation.
It's easier to get rid of a sliver if you have a plan.
Yes.
Yes, I
That's what
agree.
I'm saying.
I agree.
What else can we provide to them? Say,
Right,
that's
hey,
what she said.
we're gonna extend this, or we're adding in this community, this pocket piece over here. Let us get rid of this piece next to the
Well,
railroad.
I think that's why the stuff that, NILSA did on the parks
Mhm.
is important, because that kind of gives us a foundation to actually have that conversation with folks if we decide we want to pursue a referendum opportunity.
But I think, except for Mr. Johnson, because he just entered, we have all stated, especially looking at Paradise Park, there was no plan ever put in place for that future decision. And it's gonna keep coming up, like he just pointed out another piece of land that we could have had as goal set. And I feel the realisticness of it is, we're never in a position to do the matching, and I'd like to be in a position to do the matching.
You're right.
I've got good news. We have 9 minutes to be done.
I know.
before
I know, I'm watching that clock, guys.
So
And we kept the agenda to 3 items too, and we're still,
So
right.
for, we're obviously, keep working on that. I think the railroad intersection, Sequester Drive is like June. But soon after we get through with that intersection, Doug's been working with Jupiter, Martin County. We will try to establish, so Doug's on that one. And then update codes, corridor enhancements, obviously the charrettes this Saturday. This is being considered by council, the low impact development. I'm sorry, Molly, I'm hijacking it so we can
Go for it.
run through these. I know the EAC has asked for, some tree canopy enhancements. They're also looking for a tree donation program. We have the meats and bolts of that. Also included in that is an adopt a tree program. And so that'll help kind of supplement our tree canopy program.
So I saw you crossed out Country Club, and I think early on there was like talk about doing on Dixie, like adding trees on Dixie, but
So I crossed it out because I think, ultimately long-term, we wanna have a tree canopy for Seabrook, Old Dixie, Country Club, obviously it'd be nice. I know Mr. Bradford's done a lot of work on Country Club, and that's where the conversation originally started, but I would guess council and the citizens would want, trees everywhere, so that's why I crossed it out.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities.
And then, I think the EAC is looking at a couple of different ordinances. I know council just got an email from Mr. Bradford the other day. And then we are currently working on sustainability plan cohort and Florida League of Cities Race to Zero cohort. Lynn Britt with our team is kind of leading the charge. It has taken on what kind of came off as like a little initiative that will help guide our staff. It's proven to take up a lot of staff time, which is a little unfortunate in Lynn's position, but she's working on getting us involved in those and hopefully be able to reduce the carbon footprint. So those are still ongoing, and then of course advance the water system upgrades. You have the notes are accurate on these. Stormwater system, the only thing I'd say I can add to this is Matt has worked with Jupiter for the Dover Ditch project, and that's been a long time project for many years. That's been an issue. Jupiter has agreed to, in the Loxahatchee River Initiative group, there's a grant program that Jupiter has agreed to go in with us, and so in the next couple months, hopefully be able to get a grant for that. It's a 50-50 matching grant. Out of that project, we're 60%, Jupiter's 40%. That was done way long time ago, so that's the way it's in writing. So anyways, we're working on that grant. That'll be very important, especially for that area over there for the Dover Ditch project.
Is it gonna remain a ditch, or is it gonna?
Yeah, so right now I guess they got some old concrete things that's, just falling apart. What I think he has in there is some natural stabilization, like some, plants and things like that, that'll, instead of just being hard concrete and all that, it'll be very environmental friendly, I think, from what I'm seeing, and Jupiter's agreed that that's the way they wanna go as well. No problem. Just quick, right? And so I will work on, there was one other one, but you guys have that as well. I'll work on, reworking this, put it in a draft format, we can look at it, before we, I'll send it out maybe for comments, make sure I've captured everything, and then we can, decide if there's not a lot of comments back, we can put on a, council agenda to approve our 2022-23 strategic plan.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Meeting adjourned.
Second.
Oh, do you have to actually make a motion in the
Yes.
workshop?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think if you read Robert's Rules of Order, it says it's not necessary.
I didn't think so for a workshop, but
I don't think it is.
I don't mind doing it either.
Who's Robert?
I don't know who Robert is.
I thought it was just for
He
council
wrote a
meetings.
book though, so.
That I don't
Read that nice.
Somebody wrote a book.
I don't know.
Do we need to? I'll
Probably
do
not
it if we
technically
need
not.
to.
We've just been doing